Hello and welcome back to Madison, Wisconsin. Beautiful Madison, Wisconsin. We are here for the second annual CUBECon. I'm Andy Mangold. I'm in the booth with Jamie Topples. Your first CUBECon, correct?
Yes.
And how are you feeling so far?
I'm excited to be here. It's kind of wild to see all these amazing cards. I just did a draft and it was very blinged out, all
Oh
shiny.
yes, yeah. The Live a Dream cube. David does not pull any punches there with the card versions in that cube. Yeah, it's so nice to see everyone's labor of love here. You know, so many people that come to this convention, they all have their project they've been working on forever, and we get to see my own labor of love on stream here right now. Our stream partner is NRG. Thank you to NRG for helping us put together this great stream. This is our last event of the evening, and it is going to be a team draft of my very own Bun Magic cube. Jamie, can you review a team draft for those at home that maybe don't know what that is?
Sure. So it's 2 teams of 3, and they sit every other around the table. And you get to draft your deck, and then afterwards you get to build your deck with your team. It's so much fun to be able to play Magic with your friends this way.
Yeah, it's
My
great.
favorite.
So you get to build with your team. You also technically get to help during the games too. If you want
Yes.
some information on a mulligan decision from your opponent, or you can get a little feedback from them. And importantly, for our coverage purposes here, the teams are going to win and lose as a team. So your individual record doesn't matter. All that matters is that your team gets the wins. And our teams tonight are Team Wisconsin, which is Caleb Durward, Sam Black, and J-Bro. Caleb being last year's CUBECon champion, versus Team England. We're going international this year at CUBECon with Pro Tour top 8 champion, not champion, with a recent Pro Tour top 8 on his heels. We have Dom Harvey. We also have Emma Partlow, ready for TCG player, and Vince, better known as Pleasant Kenobi. So from across the pond, they are coming here to battle in Madison, Wisconsin.
That's a fierce field.
This is a stacked table. I would not want to be at this table with all of these skilled and seasoned players. So I expect to see some fireworks in this draft. Our featured drafter is going to be Dom Harvey. I happen to know for a fact that Dom has a little bit of an unfair advantage. He's the only person that has actually played this cube. Dom has visited us in Baltimore and actually played this cube before. Here he is diving into Pack 1. It looks like he's pulled Lightning Bolt to the front here, thinking maybe start on a nice, cheap interactive spell. I also see him considering maybe Asika's Chariot, Skyclave Apparition, or Field of the Dead. What do you like here, Jamie?
Well, I mean, I love how, like, he's flicking the cards around and showing, like, his choices, like, what he's thinking about taking.
Dom, no stranger to being on coverage. Looks like he's going to start on Chariot. So that 4-mana vehicle that makes 2/2/2 cats when it enters the battlefield. Dom looking to secure his top end of the curve, perhaps early on in this draft. I love Asika's Chariot. It's a card that, when it first got previewed, I didn't think I liked it. And then I played with it a little bit and realized I did really like it, actually. It's so cool that it's got a self-contained little engine, just makes more cats on its own. Or if you have another token you can generate, then it can do some really cool, unexpected stuff. Here we are in Pack 2. And we're looking at a Dismember, a Fairy Mastermind, or perhaps a Sylvan Library, if we want to stay on color.
Oh.
And that's a Dismember that Dom has taken there. Effectively a colorless card if you're willing to pay the life for it, which I know he will be in this environment. Now, this cube is relatively low curving compared to other cubes of this power level, so the curves are going to be low. People are going to be taking game actions on the first turns of the game that really matter. It doesn't mean the games are always fast. It means that your opponents are going to have cheap removal spells for your cheap threats, and that's the way these games tend to go. So thinking about what your curve looks like is really important. All right, now it looks like we've got a Windswept Heath pulled to the front. Ooh, but Croxa, Titan of Death's Hunger, I think is one of the power outliers in this cube. The question is Dom going to move into 2 more colors or take a safe Windswept Heath? And it looks like he has decided on a Windswept Heath. Fix your mana here. This cube does break Singleton for fetch lands and shock lands. So there are 2 copies of every fetch land. So there are 2 Windswept Heaths running around, and there are 3 copies of every shock land. Though we are only drafting 3/4 of the cube because this is a 6-player pod as a team draft as opposed to a full 8-player pod. So who knows what we'll see. Oh my goodness. Uro still in the pack. Now that's an on-color Titan in addition to Titania, Protector of Argoth. That's Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. And it looks like Titania is the pick, leaving Uro for somebody else. That's going to be a late Uro there. So far, Dom, just mono green, not venturing into a second color, but he's got his Windswept Heath to fix for mana.
It's like a safe foundation he's starting.
Yes, playing it very safe, I think, so far. Now we see Explore and Dig Through Time pulled to the front of this pack, it looks like. I'd be surprised to see Dom take an Explore here, to be honest. Unless he's brewing something that I can't imagine. Looks like maybe also Dark Confidant in the mix. Bob himself is, in fact, in attendance at the event here at CUBECON this year. I think he took the Explore, unless cards got shuffled around in a way that I couldn't see. It seems like Dom took Explore there.
Do you think that's a safe pick?
You know, it's still on color. That's a card that I don't think is among the power level you'd expect to see taken 5th pick, I think we're on right now. It seems like something you want to get much later on if you're going to be the green deck. Dom so far taking Titania, the Explorer, the Asika's Chariot, Dismember, and the Windswept Teeth. Those are the picks we have so far. Again, unless he did some sort of, sleight of hand there with that pick, which he might have done. We couldn't really see what was going on there off the bottom of the camera. Now we see Sensei's Divining Top, Marsh Flats pulled to the front, maybe even a Path to Exile. All right, let's see what Dom's going to take here. Sensei's Divining Top, a great example of a card that gets a lot better with all of these additional fetch lands. And we do see the Marsh Flats being taken there. So Dom focusing on his mana at this part of the draft. Now we're back to where we started. So this is the pack that Dom opened. One of the cards he was considering initially was that Skyclave Apparition, and it has tabled.
Wow.
So nobody's taken that, which is probably the most appealing white card in the pack. Though the question now is, do you want to go into a second color or just continue to stake out mono green? And it looks like we are just still sticking to green. I don't know this for a fact. I have not talked to Dom about his strategy, but based on how he's drafting, I would say it's almost as if he's forcing mono green and not really strongly considering many of the other options in the pack here. All right, now, interestingly, in this pack, the green card in this pack is Jarail Monovuli Recluse. Forgive my pronunciation on that word there. And that is a green card, but it triggers when you draw your second card each turn, which is not a thing that's as easy to do in mono green. So it tends to be a card you often want to play in like a blue-green deck or, a Jund deck with some other ways to get card draw. So not the kind of card you want in your mono green deck, even though it is a green card. So I got some sort of arrangement here, some sort of icon. Oh my goodness, the Croxa is still in the pack. At some point, somebody's going to be forced to play this Croxa. Kasali Pride Mage now pulled to the front. Finally, we see a card of a second color taken. That's our green-white 2-drop. Lets you remove an artifact or enchantment, or just gives your creatures Exalted. Interesting strategy we see here. I gotta say, it's so interesting as a Cube designer to watch your Cube be drafted, especially by much better players, frankly, than myself or most of the people in my local play group. And to still see Croxa floating around this pod is a bit of a shock to me. Now we see Teferi Temporal Pilgrim. This is the new 5-mana Teferi at the front of this pack here. Questing Druid, once again, a card that is not actually a mono green card at all. That card is going to trigger and get a +1/+1 counter when you cast a non-green spell. So green heavy deck actually the least well equipped to take advantage of that. And Dom has got this little sleight of hand he's doing the picks here. I think that was the Teferi, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe moving in on blue a little bit. I believe that was a quick dig through time.
Wow.
Very little thought given to that, unless I didn't see that correctly. Now we got, all right. Not picking up that Daze, though. I guess even though we're seeing some blue cards, it doesn't seem like Dom expects to have many islands in play, perhaps. Daze, of course, blue spell, but you really want to have the lands with the actual basic land type island to take advantage of them. Some late red cards here. Looks like maybe red, not that popular at this table. Let's review our picks, Dom. Thank you. All right, we got fetch lands. I'm trying to make sure we missed. So we did get the Skyclave Apparition and the Kasali Pride Mage, so perhaps we are green-white. That was a dig through time he picked. So we're in Bant, but really heavily leaning green. Now that Explorer, that card that I said I was surprised to see go early, does work really well with Jarail, the card that triggers on your second card draw each turn. So perhaps a little brew there, making that card work even outside of its best environment, which is more like a blue-green deck. How do you feel about this deck so far that Dom's drafting? Do you like playing mono green?
I do. I think it's really fun to ramp and be consistent.
All right. Now, we see a Tarmogoyf that Dom is admiring. We also see Lurrus, which I think is very likely one of the best cards in this cube. Dom not in a position, really, to take advantage of Lurrus, but it seems like perhaps considering it nonetheless. I don't think it's entirely too late to switch lanes, but, his first pick was a 4-drop he wouldn't be able to play alongside Lurrus. Titania was a card he took really highly, he wouldn't be able to play alongside Lurrus. So instead, it looks like we are looking at perhaps Noble Hierarch, perhaps Tarmogoyf, and it will be Noble Hierarch for Dom. That does fix for his two other colors, white and blue.
Do you think that Goif's going to wheel?
That's a great question. I don't really have a good sense of the sensibilities of this table. I think he actually has a decent chance of wheeling that Tarmogoyf, yeah. Here we see Nissa, who shakes the world, pulled to the front, alongside Mawlock, a card that has really impressed me from the Warhammer 40k set. You don't always get to really see the competitive pedigree of some of these supplemental products because, it wasn't printed into standard. People aren't doing, drafts of Warhammer 40k, but Mawlock is a card that has really impressed me and my local playgroup. So perhaps a reason to be red, but Dom says, no, let's stick it out with these green cards. And, the cards like Nissa, who shakes the world, that's your payoff for being mono green. That's the reward for taking that Explorer, pick 4, pick 5.
Nissa's pretty mean.
It's true. There aren't an abundance of Planeswalkers in this environment. The games tend to be very quick and fast, and Planeswalkers, they're great if you can protect them. And in this cube, there's very often a lot of pressure on the board. Your opponents are going to have creatures in play. It's harder to protect your Planeswalkers. So there's not as many running around, and I think Nissa is a premier option. Okay, now we see Once Upon a Time, Temple Garden. That is the fetch land or the shock land rather, that Dom needs to turn on his fetch lands. Taking the Once Upon a Time, though, which is, Once Upon a Time is basically a fetch land. You're going to go and get the land you need from the top 5 of your library, which is also going to serve to fix mana, in addition to finding action late if he top decks it later on in the game. All right, what we got here? That's an Abundant Harvest pulled to the front, an Elvish Reclaimer pulled to the front, Elspeth's Smite, and Knight of the Reliquary. Now, Knight of the Reliquary, a great card in the lands deck. We did see Field of the Dead in Pack 1, and it did not end up in Dom's pool. So even though we do have Titania, we now have Knight of the Reliquary, we've got a couple fetch lands floating around. There's definitely a little bit of a land sub-theme here, but I would not say that Dom is drafting the lands deck. So maybe not perhaps best equipped to take advantage of Knight of the Reliquary. He's maybe looking now for something like an Urza's Saga or a Wasteland to really make that Knight of the Reliquary shine. All right, here we see Dom considering the Wandering Emperor, Augur of Autumn, and looks like maybe on the on-deck circle there is Territorial Kavu. Wandering Emperor is another sort of high-end card. The curve of this cube, unlike the Live the Dream Cube, which we saw earlier today, the curve of this cube really tops out around 4 or 5. So I would say Dom's curve is already very healthy on the top end. We do see him taking that Wandering Emperor. He's really expecting, I think, to want to go over his opponents based on the picks we see him making. Now we got an option for a Mana Dork. We have a Mishra's Bauble, a Treetop Village, a card that I adore. Would love to see Dom make use of it, but it looks like we're going to stick with the Arbor Elf. Just try and cast these 4 or 5 drops a couple turns early. Nothing wrong with that. In this cube, you can also pair that Arbor Elf with cards like Utopia Sprawl and Wild Growth to get a Ponza-like injection of super fast mana. Now Dom is deciding between Deeproot Wayfinder and Godless Shrine, it seems. And looks like maybe the Deeproot Wayfinder. This is the card that surveils, and then you get to return a land to play, which is a nice way to fuel graveyard synergies and also benefit from landfall synergies as well. So it kind of ties together the decks that have land archetypes as well as Graveyard Matters archetypes. Passing on the Life from Alone there. Not interested in the Life from Alone for this deck, and instead taking Traverse the Ulvenwald. I think this card's interesting in how to evaluate it. There's a lot of cards end up in the graveyard in this cube pretty quickly. The spells are cheap, so you get instants and sorceries there quickly. We've got twice as many fetch lands as normal, so you're going to have lands in your graveyard almost all the time. So turning on Delirium is very possible in this cube. And once you have Delirium on, Traverse the Ulvenwald is kind of just like Green Sun Zenith, that you pay 1 green extra and you can go get any creature and put it into play because you then cast it, obviously. Now Dom taking that Hogak. I got to admit, this is a card I added somewhat recently to the cube, and I don't know how good it is, but I would love to see Dom do some stuff with this card. I mean, obviously, its constructed pedigree is impressive. This card caused a lot of problems in all of the Magic formats, really, and it had to be dealt with. But can Dom make it work here in Singleton when his deck is a little bit less focused? All right.
Did the Goif not table?
The Goif did not table, so no Tarmogoyf for Dom. That's what you get for not taking your 2 drops highly. Now, he's taking a Godless Shrine. I don't believe we have any black spells in our pool yet, if my memory serves me. We have Dismember technically, but again, Dismember effectively a colorless card. So that Godless Shrine perhaps a little speculative on Dom's part. Maybe he's hoping to get a black card later on that's really worth splashing for. Here we're looking at Urza's Bauble and Territorial Kavu. Bauble, a great example of a card here that will just help with Delirium. If you can combine it with another piece of card draw, it can trigger something like Jarell, though it's not the best at triggering Jarell because it does draw on the next turn. We're going to take the Kavu instead. Now you get the free Treetop Village, Dom. You get to play it regardless. I hope it works for you. All right, here looks like a Bomat Courier. Not interested in that mutagenic growth. Once again, a effectively colorless card. And here, our commentary friend Justin Parnell will be shocked to see Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, as one of the last 2 cards in this pack. And in fact, it will be last pick. Dom is not taking it, even though he is playing a white-green deck that is heavy in creatures. Someone got a last pick Thalia, probably can't take advantage of it. All right, how is this draft shaken up? We've got a real hard commitment to green from Dom here, and I would say a commitment to high mana value spells. We see Dom prioritizing the few 4 and 5 drops that the cube supports, perhaps trying to go over his opponents and expecting them all to be playing a little bit smaller, lower to the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he's well set up to go into the next pack.
This is actually not too dissimilar from the deck that Dom drafted when he played this cube before at my house, and I was so mad because he was playing mostly green creature deck, and I was playing this control deck. I was playing him in the finals, and I got him to the right spot where I thought I was going to turn the corner, and I tried to resolve my Planeswalker, and he mana leaked me. It was the only blue spell I'd seen the entire game, and I'm like, you're playing mana leak in your green creature deck? And yeah, it turns out it worked out really well for him. So perhaps he's leaning on his positive experience last time and trying to make a similar deck come together, mostly green with selective splashes where it makes sense for power outliers. I'm curious to know who ended up with that Kroxa and that Uro, and see, because those are 2 really powerful cards in this cube that have been going around, and someone's got that Lurrus. And actually, interestingly, we saw that Dom was forced to pass that Lurrus to his right at the beginning of this pack, and then gave the person directly to his right that last pick Thalia. So I said statistically maybe not likely that person can take advantage of it, but if the person took Lurrus, then they just got a free Thalia last pick, which is, I mean, poor Thalia. I think she deserves better, personally.
Yeah. Can I ask you, why is it called the Bun Magic Cube?
Yes, you can, because I get this question all the time, and the more I can answer it, the better. So here we're going into pack 3. I will answer your question, though, as we, and we see J-Bro here brandishing Thraben Inspector at the camera, really kind of menacing us with Thraben Inspector, perhaps his favorite card. Dom's taking Source of Plowshares here. This cube is named after my local playgroup in Baltimore, and this playgroup predates me. It's about a decade old at this point, and it started as a playgroup that was just meeting up to play Commander at like coffee shops and like restaurants around the downtown area. And one of the places they played the most was a place called the Bun Shop in Baltimore. And so they eventually came to call the group the Bun Magic Kitchen Table Pro Tour, which was a very, cheeky name because they're all, fiercely casual players. And because that was the name of our playgroup, my cube was the first cube in the playgroup, and I just named it after the playgroup because I wanted us to have a cube to play. And all these years later, that is the name it still sports, to the confusion of many. Now, Dom picking between Eternal Witness and Giver of Runes and deciding to go with that Eternal Witness here. So still leaning, I think, very hard on green. I think Giver of Runes a better card in this cube than Eternal Witness. But, especially in a mono green deck, Witness is great when you know you're going to have good targets in your graveyard to get back. But Dom does not have that many removal spells so far. We have just the Dismember, if memory serves, maybe a Path to Exile. Okay, we just saw him take Sword Splashers, actually, so right at the beginning of this pack. So, that card's a lot better when you have cheap cards in your graveyard you can get back. The baseline in this cube, for sure, is just getting your land drop, because you're going to have a lot of fetch lands. You'll very often be able to turn your Eternal Witness into another land. Now taking Birds of Paradise, going to help with all of these splashes to perhaps play these slightly off-color cards. We see Territor Kavu in the pool as maybe his only red card, a couple little white cards here. Now it's a choice between Timeless Dragon, Unexpectedly Absent, Elite Spellbinder, maybe even considering an Abrupt Decay, which I do think is one of the best removal spells in this environment, given how low curving it is. Dom looking like he's going to maybe take the big card again. Once again, going big with that Timeless Dragon. It's a 5-drop, but it's a 5-drop you can also just cast for 2, which makes it a little easier to stomach in a cube like this, where you can't always just sit around and do nothing until you get to 5.
So the curve mostly ends at 5? There's a few 6-drops?
There is only one actual 6-drop. There are other cards that technically cost 6 mana, like Shark Typhoon, but you're not actually playing Shark Typhoon very often. So there's one card that you actually just have to cast that's above 5 mana, and that's Primeval Titan. Otherwise, everything else up there has some alternate costs or some other modes that are a little bit cheaper. Looks like some table talk going on. This is a talkative crew. Got J-Bro there, who's never going to miss an opportunity to try and charm the table. And, I'm actually a little bit perturbed because now we see the camera pan out and, in fact, learned that the person who got the last pick Dahlia was J-Bro, notorious for playing mono-white aggro in the Magic Online Vintage Cube, and who I would be very shocked if he didn't take that Luris in Pack 2, Pick 2.
So he's well set up.
I'm already a little scared of J-Bro's deck, and I have so little information about it. But here we are back to Dom, looking at a Blood Crypt, perhaps, to enable some greedy splashes, or a Mystic Confluence. I gotta say, as the Cube designer, I'm getting a little worried for Dom's curve here. The big stuff, you really got to make sure that your deck is prepared to go to the late game to get to those 5 drops. And if Dom doesn't have enough early interaction or cheap creatures to throw in the way of his opponents, he might just get run over before he can cast his Mystic Confluence to begin with. Manamorpho is also an option here. Much cheaper. Again, kind of helps Dom with his interesting splashes, but not the most powerful card in his deck. He doesn't have any spellcast synergies. He will make a cat with Jarail with Manamorphos, but it really belongs in a more prowess-style deck that cares about casting spells. So we're taking the Mystic Confluence and just going to stick with that 5-drop. Back to the pack we opened. Balance still in the pack, so a nice little treat for somebody who's trying to play Control. I don't think that person is Dom, though. Here we see him taking that Balance. This is the kind of card that, it's the kind of card that if your opponent doesn't expect it out of you, you can just kind of sandbag it in, game 2 or something. They commit to the board, and oops, I actually had this incredibly powerful 2-mana board wipe in my deck that you didn't expect me to have. I guess, actually, I should say, we did see Dom really prioritizing Planeswalkers. Again, there's not a ton running around here. He has at least 2 really good Planeswalkers. Planeswalkers are the best thing, I think, on average to play with Balance, because Balance does not see those Planeswalkers. They don't count towards any of the various counts. Now we're looking at Edge of Autumn, Restless Vinestalk, perhaps a Wolfbriar Elemental. Wolfbriar Elemental being a great example of the kind of card that you have at the top of the curve here. It's a 4-drop, but you can also cast it for 5 or 6 or even more. Dom probably hoping he sees a card like Gaia's Cradle for this deck, perhaps, or some other way to generate a ton of mana and really make this top end of his curve sing. A little bit in the tank here. Edge of Autumn, great combo with Jarail, great combo with Titania, Protector of Argoth. Thinking about that Restless Vinestalk, but at the end of the day, just the Edge of Autumn is going to be the pick. I do think that Dom is going to be hard-pressed to play a basic in his splash colors. Looks like he's getting this Unexpectedly Absent fairly late here for his deck, so he's got a little more interaction to lean on now. But in a deck like this, where you have a decent number of fixing lands and you're really leaning heavily on one color, you often don't want to give up a land slot for a basic to turn a card like Edge of Autumn into fixing. So if it's going to be ramp, no matter what. He's going to have a lot of force in his deck. But the question is, can he afford to run the Mountain to let him cast Territorial Kavu, or the Plains, so Private Plains? He's got more white cards than any other color. A lot of blue cards left in this pack. Couple 2-mana counterspells here. Looks like Lose Focus. I would guess we'll see that as a sideboard card here for Dom. I'd be very surprised to see him main decking that Lose Focus.
And that was a Blood Crypt?
Blood Crypt still in the pack, yep.
That's kind of surprising.
Yeah, I think the way that it works oftentimes with 3 copies of every single Shockland is you really want the first copy in your colors for sure. That's a really high pick. So if you're playing any combination of Black-Red, and a late Colgan's Command. Now, this is a situation where I would actually be very tempted to start hate drafting in team draft style. He took a Stern Scolding, which maybe he'll play, maybe not. But Colgan's Command is really good against his deck, a really powerful 2-for-1 removal spell that I might not want to risk my opponent that I'm passing to my left be playing red-green to get that card so late. We're wrapping up the draft here, and Dom has gone, like we said, pretty heavily into a mostly green deck. I suspect we'll see exactly green-white, maybe splashing for a blue spell or 2 based on his draft, but leaning really heavily green for sure.
So it seems like he got the ramp in the top end.
Yeah, I think Dom's deck does all the things he's going to want it to do. What green is going to struggle with in this cube is going to be removal. You are not going to have ways to really reach out and proactively remove your opponent's threats. You have to just actually deploy your own and hope they are bigger and better and stronger. So I think Dom's going to have to, really have a good way to deal with those early threats to make his top end matter. Otherwise, he's got the great top end, but he'll just be dead before he can get there. While we are waiting for our players to do their deck building, we are going to read an ad from one of our lovely sponsors here at CubeCon. And the first sponsor we want to tell you about is CubeHeads. This is an acquaintance of mine, a friend of mine, Steve, has started a beautiful YouTube channel where he is interviewing various Cube personalities, content creators, Cube players, Cube curators, to kind of document the community that Cube is. Which, there's a lot of great Cube content out there for people that want to strategize on how to design your cubes. But at the end of the day, I think we all play Magic because we just want to sit around the table with people we like. And the great thing about Cube Heads and Steve's videos is that he's highlighting that aspect of the community, just the people that make it up and put it all together. I'll personally recommend his interview with T-Pug, Tyler Pugiles, the designer of the Bun Cube. I think that's a great interview there. And you can find all of these interviews at their YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/CubeHeads. That's CUBEHEADS. And thank you to CubeHeads for sponsoring CubeCon here in Madison. All right, let's speculate now. This is the best part of Team Draft is speculation. So I would bet dollars to donuts that J-Bro is playing heavily white, if not mono white, and got absolutely fed in Pack 2 by that Luris and that pick 15 Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. So if we have Dom in very heavy green, J-Bro in very heavy white, Sam Black, known for very inventive decks that will combine a lot of cards from many colors, I would expect that Sam was very excited to see that Uro, perhaps, and expect to see the Uro maybe in Sam's deck. Sam maybe getting that late Croxa, maybe perhaps playing a greedier deck. And that leaves Emma and Caleb and Vince. I don't actually know what Vince could possibly be drafting. I know Emma was maybe thinking about playing an aggro deck herself, but we're going to have to see how these break out. Our first match is going to be Dom Harvey versus Caleb Durward. Caleb being last year's CubeCon champion, had a great record in the two-day main event. Went to top 64, won that draft, and then won the top 8 draft in surprising fashion with a Dark Depths deck in the Vintage Cube.
I heard that he actually took a nap.
He was taking a nap instead of going to the bar. Well, that's going to give him a huge advantage, a huge leg up in this matchup.
No, not this time. Last time. Like, he actually took some time to take a nap, like, during the cubes. He didn't play them all.
Oh, well, I mean, that would also help. Resting up, I think that's really understated, important part of doing a big tournament like this. This is a lot of Magic you're going to play over the course of a weekend, and being well-rested and well-fed is going to be key. So, yeah, Caleb certainly, whatever he did last year worked, and he's back here to try and defend his crown. Dom Harvey hoping to stand in the way, at least in this Wisconsin versus England team draft. And we're going to see how that wraps up when we get back here. So tune in. We'll be back soon with Game 1, Dom Harvey versus Caleb Durward. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the team draft of the Bun Magic Cube here at CubeCon in Madison, Wisconsin. Our players have just finished their deck construction. Took a little longer than usual because they're doing it collaboratively here. They get to help with each other's deck construction. But we've got some deck lists here, and it looks like it'll be some very interesting matchups coming forward. Our first match, again, Dom Harvey, recent top 8 in PT Barcelona versus Caleb Durward, last year's CubeCon champion. Dom playing green-white, and Caleb playing teamer mid-range, so perhaps a slog we have in force. Who do you like in this matchup?
Probably Caleb, because he probably has more tools to deal with what Dom is doing.
That's what I'm thinking. In general, when you're playing a mid-range matchup and you're going to have better removal spells in red and better card draw in blue than your opponent who's purely green-white.
Yeah.
It sounds like an uphill battle for our hero, Dom Harvey, at the very least. One factor that we haven't really talked about that's going to come up a lot in this cube is that there are 3 copies of every Shockland, and there are no natural duels. So Caleb, playing a 3-color mana base here, is going to take a lot of damage from his mana, so that's going to be something that perhaps Dom can leverage to get in early and actually close this game out. Other archetypes we have here, we know that Emma Partlow has drafted Red-White Aggro, the Fun Police at the table. How do you feel about the Fun Police in Cube?
I feel like that it's a necessary evil.
It's only fun to win if it's hard, right? If you want to, it's the best deck to persevere over when they're supposedly the Fun Police, and you get to have fun in spite of that. So Emma playing Red-White Aggro. Sam did exactly what we expected. The deck name here I have is 5-color interaction, which is kind of exactly what I expected Sam to do. That is really where we're going to see the rubber hit the road with regards to this painful mana base. We're going to go to the table now to our very first match. Again, Dom Harvey and Caleb Durward. Let's see who wins the roll and how things shake out.
It is really anyone's game.
This is going to be really interesting. I think this is likely to be our longest match. These 2 decks, both mid-range decks. I don't actually know what Caleb's deck list looks like. It looks like he is on the play and leading off here with a Retrofitter Foundry. Retrofitter Foundry, a great way to grind out a win in a long game, and then Dom answering back with a Birds of Paradise. Now, I said this would be a slow match, and the only thing we got going for us is both these are very fast players, so we see Caleb immediately dispatching that Birds of Paradise with a Walking Ballista, not bothering to put it in play or go and get a counter, but in fact just, you know, put it right in the graveyard, send that Birds of Paradise to Jesus. Dom traverse the Ulvenwald for Plains, and then Giver of Runes, which he must have gotten on the wheel, because I recall him taking something else over that Giver in the draft. They're off to the races. Lots of forests in play.
What is that?
This is a Jewel Thief, a little uncommon from the streets of New Capenna that can absolutely hang in this meta. Vigilance, Trample, and it makes a treasure token on ETB, which I believe the players are just agreeing is there. Judges, maybe we can get a treasure on the table there so that our people at home can follow along. That's a Cemetery Prowler now from Dom, which is going to exile that Walking Ballista from Caleb's graveyard, and it's going to make creature spells that Dom casts cheaper to play, which we know that Dom has quite a few creatures in his deck, so that cost reduction is going to be relevant. Already shaping up to be a battlefield-heavy slog here with quite a bit of power and toughness on both sides of the table. We have the Giver of Runes that Dom got to untap with. You know, that's just like your Mother of Runes situation. Now, Giver of Runes can't protect itself, but it can give protection from colorless. So that's going to make any removal out of Caleb's deck a little bit tricky in the face of that Giver of Runes. You kind of have to remove the Giver first before you can unlock the rest of your removal.
So is Giver of Runes sort of like the mom we have at home?
Pretty much, yeah. It was printed in Modern Horizons as, I think, ostensibly a fixed version of Mother of Runes. We see a Noble Hierarch here out of Caleb Durward, which is going to give that Jewel Thief +1/+1 when it attacks if he chooses to attack alone with it with the Exalted trigger. But yeah, so Giver of Runes 1/2 instead of 1/1, which is, you know, that does matter. Against 1/1 tokens, it can be a big advantage. And then protection from colorless actually does come up quite a bit. So it ended up being kind of more of a side grade, though I think most people agree that the original Mother of Runes, quite a bit ruder to play with. Now I think we see, main phase activation of Retrofitter Foundry, which does require tapping. There we go, catching up to that. To play a Gaia's Cradle, a card that Dom really wishes he would have gotten past, but it looks like Caleb soaked it up in the draft. Treasures being sacrificed for red mana to play a Mawlock. Looks like Mawlock on X = 2 to eat that Giver of Runes. Lots is happening on the board here at CUBECon. This is a pretty big turn here for Caleb. Now, it can't swing into the... Well, I mean, could swing into the Cemetery Prowler here because of that Exalted trigger. We don't see Caleb attacking here. That would be a 4/4. Swinging into the 3/4 Cemetery Prowler, unless I'm missing something. And as we always say, we're in the booth here because we're not anywhere near as good as players as these people are. So Caleb likely seeing through the matrix there in a way that I'm not. Dom is resolving a Edge of Autumn here, basically a Rampant Growth to go get it basically and put it into play. So far, I think Caleb's got a pretty good footing in this early game.
Yeah. And that Gaia's Cradle is pretty scary.
Yeah, now, I mean, with all these creatures in play, Caleb threatens to untap with a lot of mana, and Cradle with Retrofitter Foundry is a bit of a combo. It doesn't go infinite, but it does scale up in this sort of logarithmic way. Have you played with Retrofitter Foundry at all, Jamie?
No.
This card is, at first, somewhat unassuming. Here we see an Oust for that Ignoble Hierarch. People don't often expect to see the removal spells pointed at smaller creatures like Ignoble Hierarch, but in this case, Oust is going to put that into Caleb's library, effectively making his draw a couple turns from now a lot worse. So you're getting rid of the Exalted thing, you're getting rid of that mana fixing, and you're also putting a little trap in there for Caleb's future draws. Yeah, Retrofitter Foundry, one of these cards that is, it looks kind of unassuming at first. Here we see Mawlock getting in for 4. And, yeah, so Retrofitter Foundry looks kind of unassuming. You know, it's a pretty inefficient in terms of mana token generator. But the trick with that card is that you get to block and then upgrade your tokens along the way. So oftentimes a single Retrofitter Foundry, as long as your opponent doesn't have trample, can go a really long way to just eating up a bunch of damage, soaking up a bunch of attacks from your opponent while upgrading tokens so they become an actual threat. One of the challenges of paper coverage here is we don't have real visibility of number of cards in hand. I think Caleb is down to very few, maybe just one card in hand, which really matters, but he does have that mana sink in the Retrofitter Foundry. He will not be, looks like at least 2 cards in hand, now maybe 3. He will not be wanting for something to do with his mana with that Retrofitter Foundry in play. We do see Celestial Colonnade, a relevant creature land on the board for Dom Harvey, though no blue mana to activate it right now. So it looks like Dom trying to figure out how to stem the bleeding here from Caleb's board. Caleb swinging in with all of these tokens, and here we see a little bit of the value Retrofitter Foundry. Okay, you're going to block one of those? I'll turn that one into a Thopter. You take 6, go down to 10.
That is so cool.
Dom actually reading Retrofitter Foundry right now to say, hey, wait a minute, are you allowed to do that? And yes, Dom, you are, and it's very frustrating to play against.
And with the Cradle, like, it just makes more and more mana.
Exactly. You can actually untap the Retrofitter Foundry for 3 mana, so
Yeah.
you can just eventually start to keep amping up and up and up and just making a ton of creatures. It works the same way with Solarian Academy because all the creatures are also... Here we see Titania, Protector of Argoth, one of the big bombs in Dom's deck, but he has not drawn any of his fetch lands, and honestly did not end up with as many as you'd like to see in a deck like this. So just a 5-3, just a 5-3 pass. Hope that you have no answer for it, and you can figure out some way to put a land in the graveyard next turn, which we don't see on board. We also saw Dom casting that Edge of Autumn, which would have been a free way to make a 5-3 token with Titania, Protector of Argoth. Maybe he didn't have a Titania at the time. Who knows what was going through his head and what this hand looked like. But right now, Titania not looking like a particularly compelling stabilizing force, and Caleb is getting into the red zone as expected, and Dom's had enough. Dom's maybe got some outs here. It's not over, but Dom's not going to play that game out. We're going to go to game 2. Back to the booth here. We are going to thank another one of our sponsors here at CubeCon, and that is a little something called, it says here, MTGO, which I think stands for Magic the Gathering Online. Have you heard of this, Jamie?
Yes.
It turns out this is a way you can play Magic on your computer at home without even leaving the house, which I think sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
You play Magic Online, correct?
Do I play it?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think I've seen you streaming that before. What are some of your favorite formats to play on Magic Online?
Well, I mean, they have very good draft prize support, so I like to do that. There's always cubes. Not always. A lot of times there are cubes on there, so
is the
fun.
cube cycle going through? You
Yeah.
can play Commander on Magic Online. You can get all your favorite printings of all your favorite cards. If you're aiming to play in the Pro Tour, you can even qualify for a regional championship in a bunch of different formats online entirely. You don't have to put pants on. You can qualify for a regional championship, which is quite impressive. So for those of you that don't know what Magic Online is, make sure you check out mtgo.com and play it for yourself. All right, Dom is down a game. Our hero that we watched draft, we're kind of implicitly in his corner for watching him draft. He's down to Caleb's deck, which, we saw tier and mid-range. We still actually saw mostly green cards out of Caleb, too. So I'm not sure if he just drew the mostly green portion of his deck, or if we're really dealing with 2 primarily green decks, each splashing for a couple other cards. And I got to say, if you're splashing for another card, Moloch is quite a bit better than a lot of the things that we see Dom splashing for. How do you like to break open these mid-range mirrors if you're stuck in a slogfest like this? What are your favorite cards to pull you out from being behind?
I mean, that's hard to say.
Sorry, Jamie. No time for an answer because we're back to the game, and these two players are not wasting any time. Similar start here from Dom with the Birds of Paradise, but it seems to have survived. So we get to actually activate the Birds of Paradise this time, and we're going to play a Kasali Pride Mage and blow up what looks like a Utopia Sprawl that was Caleb Durward's first play. 3 mana to get rid of your 1 mana enchantment. Not a great play on tempo. My guess is that Dom is gambling that Caleb kept a land light hand on the back of that Utopia Sprawl, either for color fixing or for mana generation in general. And here we see Wild Growth, the Utopia Sprawl at home, as it were, making the other forest tap for 2, and a Manamorphose. A lot of spells on the stack here for Caleb Durward.
Fast start.
Into Fire Ice, 1 to your bird, 1 to you. And this is why I was saying in this cube, the graveyards fill up fast. You can get Delirium. You can Delve Threats are really good here because, that is turn 2 for Caleb. We got 3 cards in the yard and quite a bit of mana generation in play. Slower start here for both people, though, in terms of actual threats. And here comes a Courser of Krufix. This is definitely a way to break open a mid-range mirror like this. Caleb playing that island off the top. Effective card advantage. You are going to have to reveal the top card of your library there, Caleb. It is revealed at all times. Yeah, he gets to see that first. Ooh, and it's Cradle. Swords of Plowshares sending that Courser of Krufix back from whence it came to the Exile Zone. Now we see Marsh Flats out of Dom, which I'm noting just as a way to make any future Titanias much better now that we have a fetch land in the graveyard to actually get that token out of Titania, which is the whole reason you play it, let's be honest. Here is Dom's Pack 1, Pick 1, Asika's Chariot. Going to make 2 cat tokens and start generating snowballing advantage here if Caleb does not have an answer for either the tokens or the chariot or some combination of the 2. Jewel Thief is back again. making that treasure token. The great thing about Jewel Thief is in a mid-game situation like this, it effectively just costs 2, right? Because Caleb now has that treasure to use.
Yeah.
So fixed mana a little bit, and you got a 2-mana 3/3 Vigilance Trample is quite good.
For a common, yeah.
Looks like we're waiting for the judges here to pull these cat tokens so we can have a clear board state. Everyone at home knows what's going on. We love that. These players just too eager to get into the game and start battling to wait for such dalliances like tokens.
Are there a lot of token producers in the queue?
You know, there are, just by virtue of the fact that I'm trying to play at a high power level, but there are not. There's fewer than a lot of people play in similar kinds of cubes.
Okay.
So, yeah, I try and limit them where possible because it does cause a lot of hassles like we're seeing here.
Right.
Just a lot to keep track of. So here the Chariot does have onboard attacks. We don't know what Caleb could have in his hand. And here we see the Titania. This is a very different game. We have Dom curving out 2 of his highest picks, Asika's Chariot into Titania. Titania going to make a 5/3 immediately. Now, that token can be copied with Asika's Chariot. And this is what I was talking about in the draft portion, where on its own, Chariot is just going to be a cat snowball machine. It's going to...
Which is powerful.
Which is already powerful, but Dom is going to make that look silly now by, instead of turning into a cat-generating machine, turning into a 5/3 elemental-generating machine with Titania.
Do the elementals have any sort of... do they have trample or anything?
No text, no keywords on the elementals. They are just 5/3. It's just power and toughness. You know, 2 of the most important keywords you could possibly have. And now Dom flooding the board with a ton of tokens and really demanding a big answer from Caleb. And in your teamer deck, you don't... I'm not going to see a board wipe, right, at a teamer. That's not going to happen. We see a Shark Typhoon here, though. So this will actually allow Caleb to block with the Shark token and the Jewel Thief to trade for the Chariot, which... This is not a good deal for Caleb, right? We're not happy about this, but this is what we have to do because we can't let these tokens keep generating over and over again and keep getting 5/3s turn over turn.
Right.
Or it looks like actually we're seeing the cycle for the Shark, drawing a card, getting more information, and then choosing not to block. So maybe Caleb just wanted that information to inform a potential block, or maybe he drew an answer. We're not sure yet, but that's what happened here. So a total of 15, 19, 23 power on the board now for Dom. I'm not sure what turn of the game we're on. I want to say 4 or 5. So it's definitely an explosive start out of that deck, which is definitely something it's capable of.
Yeah.
And now looking for some sort of explosive answer from Caleb to keep him in this game. Shark getting in for some damage. We're going to skull clamp the Shark to draw 2 cards. And then scoop them up. All right. You know, we said this would be the slowest match, and, you know, these players are doing their best to make a liar out of me by just scooping it up as soon as they don't want to play this game anymore. Say, I'm having no fun. I'm taking my cards, and I'm going home. Well, we're going to a Game 3, though, to see how we're going to settle this. And Dom, as the winner of the last game, presumably will be on the draw, giving Caleb the first chance to establish his board and start building up some threats. How about that game? And we saw a very different deck out of Dom that time.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. I'm going to be honest.
I think it's going to really matter the order in which these players draw their cards. Now, again, we don't know how much blue Caleb has. We saw Shark Typhoon that game. We know that his deck is ostensibly teamer mid-range. Blue is going to have more ability to see more cards, draw cards, shape their draws, get some card selection. Dom is kind of at the mercy of the top of his deck. There's very little card selection in Dom's deck, so if he draws the cards in the right order, it's going to be quite powerful. But if he doesn't, he might be on the receiving end of just choice removal spells from Caleb or an even more explosive start, which we know is possible with things like Gaia's Cradle.
Yeah.
They're stuff on for Game 3. I wonder how our players might be sideboarding here. So if you are playing this sort of mid-range matchup, what are your kind of favorite kinds of cards to bring in out of the sideboard in a matchup like this if you have access to them? Let's play, you know, Magical Christmas Land Shopping. Let's pretend you have any card out of your sideboard you want. What do you want to bring in against one of these players?
I mean, probably some artifact removal for the
now that we've seen Titania, I mean, we've seen Titania, and also on the other side of the board, we've seen Retrofitter Foundry, so artifact removal certainly would be appealing in this situation. I also would love to see some big removal spells. Stuff to get rid of the really big threats would be great. So, yeah. Titania is a really interesting card. It represents a lot of power, right? We saw Titania put 10 power into play the turn it was played. That's scary.
Right, and fast.
It is scary. It is fast. You can bolt Titania, right? Because Titania enters the battlefield. There is an enter the battlefield ability to get a land, put it into your graveyard from play, and you don't get that elemental until you sacrifice that land. So you got a little window there where if you can bolt Titania or remove her in some other way, you can save that. But we're going right back to Game 3 here, not wasting any time.
Wow.
we have no visibility here into mulligans, which I do think matter quite a bit in this matchup. Again, with very little card selection on either side of the table, it would appear being down a card might matter quite a bit. Here we see a free Once Upon a Time from Dom Harvey in his first turn. Going to go get a land or creature of his choice and put it into his hand.
That's got to feel good.
That'll make a lot of opening hands really good if one of your cards is Once Upon a Time. A little land heavy, go get a creature. You need your land, go get a land. And he gets Titania. Now, the information is real, so we know that Dom has one of his sledgehammers in his hand. We know, and so does Caleb. And Caleb will, of course, be playing with that information and trying to stem the possible damage from a Titania whenever it comes down. Bird of Paradise is the follow-up here from Dom. And now, Sylvan Library. This is a card I love for breaking open a mid-range matchup. This is the kind of card draw that Dom simply does not have access to. Celestial Colonnade for Dom, getting set up over there. So far, these games have been fast. They've been fiery, and the creature lands have not had a chance to matter in the slightest. So right now, that Celestial Colonnade playing a lot like a Guild Gate. Maybe it'll have a chance to shine if these players can get to some sort of board stall.
Titania is 5 mana?
Titania is 5 mana. It is 3 green for Titania. And again, really Dom, I think, is going to be trying not to cast Titania until he has a land in the graveyard.
Right.
Or possibly an Edge of Autumn in hand, because that will cycle for free just by sacrificing a land. One of those two things is what I want to see if I'm Dom before I go committing my 5-drop to the board. All right, Caleb tanking on that Sylvan Library. I don't actually know if he... Looks like he did not keep any extra cards, but he does have a fetch land, and this is the kind of environment where Sylvan Library can really shine. So Caleb gets to do something not quite a brainstorm, doesn't get to put cards from his hand back on top of his library, but gets his choice of the top 3 cards, and then can shuffle away the ones he doesn't want. So here, Caleb kept the best card, and then 2 cards he didn't like, shuffled them right away with that Polluted Delta. Very powerful, and as this game goes on longer, that Sylvan Library will accrue a sort of advantage that Dom will have a very hard time surmounting. So I think Dom needs to be all just pedal to the metal right now. He needs to go as fast as he possibly can because that Sylvan Library says you are not winning a long game against me.
Right. It's just too much value over time.
Yes, and value that he just can't compete with, really. And we don't see card advantage in the card draw sense from Dom Harvey. Now, he does have card advantage in the virtual sense. We saw last game making just an explosion of tokens. You know, tokens a portion of a card. That's a sort of card advantage, but he's really got to think about how he's going to play this long game if he doesn't. And so far, no threats. You don't like to see land pass out of your mid-range deck on 4 mana. That's not really where you want to be. And here we see Dom making an attempt at answering that Sylvan Library, at least for a while. He's going to respond to the Petty Theft on his Birds of Paradise by casting Unexpectedly Absent and tucking that Sylvan Library under the top 2 cards of Caleb's library. So it's going to be a couple more turns before we start to see those Sylvan Library decisions come back to play. Oh, or not. Now we just have Jace. And Jace will allow Caleb to find that Sylvan Library right now if he so chooses. And he is, in fact, going to 0 to Brainstorm. You know, you often want to plus your Jace if you expect some sort of burn-based removal or some creatures in play. But empty board, opponent's not playing red. I'll just start Brainstorming every turn. Thank you very much. That will be fine. And this is, yet again, another example of the kind of card advantage that Dom does not have access to. So,
right. He has to answer that pretty much immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dom's plan here has to be the aggressor. I think he's been put into the situation where he needs to end this game. He needs to start pressuring Caleb's life total. And as of right now, he doesn't have the tools to do so. He does, however, have an answer for Jace the Mind Sculptor in the form of Phyrexian Revoker. The Birds of Paradise is redeployed. And we also see a cheeky little treetop village down there. That's one you don't want to forget about. That's just 2 mana to turn that into a 3/3 with Trample. That can pressure Planeswalkers. That can even end games in a cube like this if everything else fails.
Backup plan.
Yes. And we see a robust backup plan here from Dom in the 2 creature lands. But you know what? 2 creature lands are not going to go the distance against Jace and Sylvan Library. So a lot more blue. We're seeing the blue side of Caleb's deck. I'm not sure if he has sided into more of this blue or if he just happened to draw more of it this game and we happen to see green heavy spells in the first couple games. But it's definitely the kind of game now where both our players are enabling they're pursuing their strategy, right? They're both enacting their plan. And here we see fetch land into what I expect will be Titania, which is exactly the kind of thing. Oh my goodness, this is beautiful. All right, so in response to the fetch land activation, we see Vendilion click. And this is what I was talking about. Caleb saw on turn 1 that hammer get put into Dom's hand, that huge bomb, and held that Vendilion Click till exactly the right time, which was in response to that land going to the graveyard. Dom had no window there to cast the Titania with the land in the graveyard to get the full value out of it, and then just has to bottom it. And I'll tell you what, the card he's drawing is not going to be as good as Titania because, I mean, I guess it could be Nissa. That would be almost as good, but certainly not in this board state. Even Nissa in this board state is going to be rough because the value Nissa provides is relatively slow, all things considered. I mean, Titania is just going to put 10 power in play. That just says, answer me sooner, you're going to die. Whereas Nissa is going to make a 3/3 and then give you a little mana. It's going to be a little slower burn to actually get your opponent dead. Now, Dom says, okay, you've gotten rid of all my other options. You've said I don't get to play my Titania, and we're just going to send this Treetop Village at Jace, which is going to trade with the Vendilion Click, and also 2 of that damage is going to trample over, leaving Jace at a perilous 1 devotion. And then we see the Brazen Borrower flashed in there on the end step from Caleb, and then getting immediately into the red zone, putting Dom at 16. So Caleb's deck playing a lot more controlling in this matchup. We have card advantage. We have some evasive attackers that are going to chip in some damage while Caleb is controlling the game. The name of this game has been that Vendilion Click. That was a masterful Vendilion Click out of Caleb, and you love to see cards played like that. It's just played to its fullest potential in that situation. We even got to see, we see that Dom's hand has a couple more lands in it that perhaps he would like. And Caleb had that information, too, when he got to decide whether or not he traded with that Treetop Village. If you think that mana is going to matter, maybe trading with the Treetop Village is more appealing there. But that Vendilion Click, giving that information and answering that Titania has really stemmed Dom's start here. And he's got his hand on his mouth, shocked and appalled at what's happening to him. Manamorphose out of Caleb here. Not sure what colors of mana he's making. Perhaps black and white just to intimidate his opponent. Maybe there's a question at the table, it looks like, perhaps. So what's going on here?
So Caleb has 2 cards in hand?
I can't quite tell. He's moving them around quick. It looks like it looks like exactly 2 cards in hand for Caleb to the 3 on Dom's side of the board. But we know one is a forest and one is an oust.
Yeah.
And, while it is really nice to oust the Ignoble Hierarch, it's not that nice to oust a Brazen Borrower. And it's really, really not nice to oust a Mawloc. Here we see Mawloc with the rare Ravenous text, which is going to allow Caleb to draw a card in addition to eating that Phyrexian Revoker. And I got to say, that's a big, big swing. Having that giant creature come down, take your creature away, and also draw me a card. That's a 3-for-1, a very, very solid 3-for-1, which I'm not sure what Dom's going to do in this spot, to be honest. I hate to see our hero go down like this, but it's not looking good.
I mean, he needs an answer or a threat quickly, and
Caleb sending a strong message. I'm the CUBECON champion. Don't you come to my house and try and play me in Cube. This is what I do. And of course, Jace the Mind Sculptor, a perfect example of the kind of card that just, it feels like your opponent always has it. How do they always have the right card at the right time? I can't figure out what it is. Could it be the brainstorming every turn?
Right.
Could that perhaps be contributing to why my opponent has everything they want? And we mentioned this in between games. Dom at the mercy of the top of his deck here. There's not a lot Dom can do other than hope he draws what he needs.
Which he needs a lot.
He needs a lot, and Caleb does not have such a reliance. Caleb gets to pick and choose what he wants depending on the game state and change his mind and start to seek different cards with that Jace. Here we do have a possible, so with the Birds of Paradise blue, we could see Celestial Colonnade activated here to get rid of Jace. But at this point, Jace has done a lot of the damage, and to effectively tap out to kill the Jace and then be staring down an enormous Mawloc, still a 3/1 flyer in play, not the greatest option. So Dom considering whether or not that's what he wants to do or if he wants to spend his mana on developing his board. I think you need an answer to the Mawloc. You need an answer to the Jace. Answering both in one turn is going to be hard because, again, that Oust, which is a removal spell I really love. I think it's a really interesting and a fun removal spell to play with. Looking really bad right here against that Mawloc. You just simply cannot give that Mawloc back to Caleb 2 turns later. That's not an option.
No, this is looking pretty rough for Dom.
Dom perhaps a little less willing to just scoop him up, though. It's just game 3. Maybe willing to play to narrow outs. And he has decided that, you know what? It feels awful. We saw him shake his head as he did it. But he does decide to oust that Mawloc and then, in fact, just kill Jace with Giver of Runes instead of committing all of his mana to that Celestial Colonnade. Then we see Eternal Witness coming down. has a choice of Oust, Once Upon a Time, Fetch Land. We're getting the Once Upon a Time. So that is some of the very little card selection Dom does have. And now he's saying, all right, well, I'm going to answer that card in the best way I can, which is admittedly not that great. And now I'm going to try and draw something really good with my Once Upon a Time. Though I will say, the best threats left in Dom's deck are the Wandering Emperor and Nissa Who Shakes the World, which you can't get with Once Upon a Time. I would say his best hit here is probably something like Timeless Dragon, which is not really going to turn this game around, because, again, that's just going to get eaten by that Mawloc in a turn. Skyclave Apparition. Now, there's a good answer to Mawloc. That's a really good answer to Mawloc. Even though Skyclave Apparition can only hit small mana value things, that Mawloc in play is just a 2 mana value creature, even if Caleb dumps 8, 9 mana into it. That's where that Ravenous keyword that Caleb's going to draw a card when he pays a sufficient amount for X is really going to matter, because, sure, okay, you can remove it. That's great. I already killed one of your things and drew a card, so that's fine by me. 2 cards in hand for both players. And it's funny, you know, if you jumped into this game at this state right now, you would think that Dom was ahead, but we know Mawloc is coming. So,
yeah.
So even though Dom looks okay right now, we know and he knows that there is a big problem coming down the lane, and it is that Mawloc, which I believe Caleb has drawn just now, if I have not lost count. Maybe I have lost count, because he's just passed the turn. So I think it's next turn we're going to expect to see that Mawloc then.
I don't see a gold card. It's hard to tell, though.
Eternal Witness getting in. Caleb opting to keep his Brazen Borrower to be on Chump Block the Celestial Colonnade in the future duty, or perhaps chip in for damage duty. Knight of the Reliquary goes on the stack from Dom, and it's remanded by Caleb. Dom says, all right, fine, I'll do it again. I got plenty of mana. I don't need you. So as much as it seems like Dom may have stabilized here, again, this Mawloc is going to really clean things up, unless I've missed something. Was there some reason that Caleb had to shuffle or something we missed? I don't think so, in which case...
I think it's in his hand now.
Now, there is something to say for the Giver of Runes. I mean, Mawloc pretty much has to take the Giver of Runes out here, because Giver can just protect anything else that the Mawloc would hit. But Caleb will be left with a giant threat, the biggest thing on board by a wide margin, and will also draw a card for his trouble whenever he decides to deploy this card. I don't know. Instead, we see a different line here. Snapcaster Mage. This is a main phase Snapcaster Mage here to go and get Manamorphose. Oh, you know what? All this time, Caleb has not had red mana. That's what happened.
Oh.
I thought we saw Utopia Sprawl there, but we don't know what color that named. So I think Caleb has been trapped on red mana, which makes that house look way better than I thought it did. But now we see a Snapcaster Mage just on mana-fixing duty to allow this Mawloc to finally come down. Or it looks like Caleb also has Flame of Anor in his hand, which he's going to get both modes with that Snapcaster Mage because he does control a wizard. That's going to be 5 damage to the Giver of Runes and draw 2 cards. Perhaps just draw me naturally into my next red source so I can cast a Mawloc later. And that is really, really rough here.
Yeah.
Dom opting to give his Knight of the Reliquary protection on the way out. Might as well. That Giver is not going to survive anyway. The card advantage that Caleb is generating here while interacting with the board is posing a big problem for Dom. We see draw 2 cards, kill your thing, make a Mawloc, kill your thing, draw a card. This sort of play pattern is really hard for a fair creature deck like Dom's to combat.
Right, and his life total, I mean...
He is at just 7, so he's got to be careful to just not die to a couple attacks from that Brazen Borrower here. And now we got Exalted, too, on that Brazen Borrower, so... We do have a Birds of Paradise to chump with, so that will be on chump duty at some point soon here. We probably can't hold up mana for the Celestial Colonnade all the time. We have very little instant speed plays in Dom's deck.
He has 1 card in hand?
Yeah, it looks like 1 card in hand. We don't know what it is. We do have a Knight of the Reliquary that can do a little bit of work here. Dom did not end up with any great Knight of the Reliquary targets. We mentioned in the draft that he knew he wasn't getting Field of the Dead because we saw that in Pack 1. He got the Knight in Pack 2. He did not end up with a card like Urza Saga or a card like Wasteland. Not that Wasteland does literally anything right now. It doesn't. Wasteland is no good right now. He didn't end up with another really appealing target. I mean, he has Colonnade and the Treetop Village, which he's already kind of used those resources. But nothing that's going to totally turn his game around, I don't think, on the back of this Knight of the Reliquary. So now, still waiting for red. Yeah, this is the game where the Utopia Sprawl got blown up by the Kasali Pride Mage, and the Wildgrowth stuck around. So that is why Caleb has been stuck on this Mawloc in hand. Elvish Reclaimer, that will fix for red if he gets to untap with it. And a Gaia's Cradle. So this Mawloc eventually will be for an enormous X value,
Oof.
most likely. Oh, we have Ignoble Hierarch now. We have our red from Ignoble Hierarch, of course. I missed that last turn. So we've got our red. Mawloc is likely coming now, I would guess, based on how all this mana is being tapped. Now, I mean, Caleb does have to think. He is playing into a couple open blue mana. 3 blue mana from the Birds of Paradise, Noble Hierarch, and Celestial Colonnade. No real knowing of what kind of counter spells that Dom might have. You might choose to play around a mana leak here or something. Looks like we are committing all of our resources, save for 2 lands, to the Mawloc, thus making it an enormous 11-11,
Oof.
destroying that Knight of the Reliquary, drawing Caleb a card. That's going to go get, I think, the last creature land in Dom's deck, which is that Restless Vinestalk. Now, Restless Vinestalk, normally pretty good against a big creature like Mawloc because you can attack and actually shrink your opponent's creature, but it's got all those plus counters. It's not going to work in that situation. Looks like Colonnade
Was on chump duty.
Looks like Colonnade was just on. Colonnade went to the graveyard because what attacked? Oh yeah, it traded. It traded with the because the Exalted trigger on the Brazen Borrower. Colonnade was on trade duty, not block duty. All right, we see a cycled Edge of Autumn from Dom. Skycave Apparition, which Caleb did know about. Caleb knew that Skycave Apparition was here. So now, I think maybe, I dare say, I mean, Caleb drew a lot of cards last turn, so, we can't say anything with certainty, but we're starting to reach the point of the game where Dom's creature lands could really start to matter. The Restless Vinestalk is the only one remaining. The Treetop Village and the Celestial Colonnade have both gone to the graveyard, but this Restless Vinestalk, here we go. We see this coming in. This is going to attack and either make the Birds of Paradise a 3/3. That is, in fact, that looks like it's what Dom's considering. There's no reason to shrink your opponent's creatures right now. So the question is, does he want to keep up a flying chump blocker? Does he want to get in for some more damage? Dom in the tank thinking about it. This is what can happen in a cube like this. We've seen some really explosive games out of these decks, but now the cards have traded. We've kind of ground the game out. And I still think, we don't know why yet, but I think Caleb's probably in a good position here with all the cards he's drawn relative to Dom, who has laid all of his cards on the table. Dom's plan is completely transparent. I've played all my cards. I played my last answer you knew about. I've got this Restless Vinestalk. I intend to attack you with it. And Caleb is the one that potentially has some tricks up his sleeve. We'll see what he drew off that Flame of Anor and the Mawloc last turn. First thing, we're just going to cycle through this Waterlogged Grove, perhaps indicating that, in fact, Caleb does not have any tricks up his sleeve. Immediately cycling through that Horizon land. And now, thinking a little bit.
Does he have all lands in hand?
And just passing the turn. So, here, no flying blockers out of Caleb.
Yeah.
Which means that Dom, just by doing what he did last turn, animating that Restless Vinestalk, attacking with the Birds of Paradise and the Vinestalk, means you've got a Vinestalk that needs to be chump blocked, and you've got 3 in the air that, on board, it appears that Caleb has no answer to.
Lots of mana and cards, though.
Yeah, lots of mana and cards, though I do think that the immediate cycling of that Waterlogged Grove last turn is a sign of weakness. Perhaps something that Dom is going to seize on and say that you don't have anything. You wouldn't be just pitching land immediately if you had anything else to do with your mana.
I don't think he has a choice. He has to be aggressive here,
Ultimately,
right?
Yeah, I think you're right. No matter what Dom thinks Caleb has in his hand, I'm not sure how many options he reasonably has. He just wants to end this game because who knows what those cards could be. I'd rather not find out. My game plan is transparent. Let's get in here. So we see the Restless Vinestalk, the Birds of Paradise, and the Eternal Witness. We can surmise with the power of deduction that he has targeted the Birds of Paradise with the Restless Vinestalk. He's pointing now just to make that 100% clear. Otherwise, the Birds of Paradise has no power, and it's not worth attacking with. We have a 3/3 flyer in the air, a 2/1 on the ground, and the Restless Vinestalk. Caleb, I believe, does have enough lands with this activation now to turn on this Elvish Reclaimer, which is going to trade with the Vinestalk now. That's going to make the Elvish Reclaimer into a 3/4, plus the Snapcaster Mage. That will all sort of trade in a bloodbath, which is stemming the damage here. That is effectively an answer to how Dom is threatening to win this game. Oh, he does not. He's showing us there are no lands in his deck. There are no lands in his deck. He just activated Elvish Reclaimer, got his Shelter Thicket, and that is it. I think Caleb has, in fact, drawn quite a few lands we can figure out at this point. Fist bump. I don't know what just happened. Who conceded? Someone tell me what happened. I thought I was following this game pretty closely, but I don't. What just happened?
That was quite the game. Yeah, I don't know.
Activate Reclaimer. Show you my deck. Show you I have no lands left. He wasn't dead on that attack.
Right, and then Dom didn't really
Divine
have
Stalk
another
was going to
threat.
get traded.
Right. So
Justin, can we get some help on here? What just happened? There was a dismember. Dom dismembered the Elvish Reclaimer. See, Dom with his tricky little sleight of hand didn't even see that happen.
I didn't see it either.
Dismembering the Elvish Reclaimer is going to be what does it. So, yeah, that is quite a way to end that match. It got really clogged up at the end there. There was a lot of big boards, and it was swinging back and forth quite a bit. You know, it seemed like that Mawlock was really going to turn the game around. Then it turns out that Caleb actually had to scramble a little bit to find red mana to recast it, making that oust look reasonable out of Dom. I love those games. That was some great magic back and forth. Great magic here in Madison, Wisconsin.
That was a great game 3.
Oh, boy. All right, so we know that Team England is up at least 1-0. Again, this is a team draft, so individual records don't matter. All that matters is the greater good. Dom scored a win for Team England, and so they're up at least 1-0. We don't know the outcomes of these other matches. We'll find out as the stream goes on. Our next match is going to be Emma Partlow versus Sam Black. Emma playing red-white aggro. I know Emma likes to play an aggro deck, and it seems like she has played to her strengths here and drafted what, by all accounts, according to what's coming through the grapevine, is a pretty disgusting-looking aggro deck. And Sam on his classic 5-color brew. How do you like this matchup, Jamie?
I'm very interested to see how it plays out.
I think
it could go either way, right? If she gets the nice curve out and gets everything going, like she could just run Sam over.
I think what we're going to see here is a big importance placed on that mana base. I think we heard that Sam Henley has a couple basic lands in his whole deck, which means that he's playing either tapped lands or shock lands. There's nothing else available to him in this environment. So he's either going to be playing off-curve all game to not take damage from his lands, or he's going to be taking damage against the aggro deck to try and answer Emma's threats. There's going to be a really interesting tension there in whether Emma can get under Sam before all this powerful 5 colors worth of cards that Sam has jammed into the deck can turn the corner, or whether Sam is just going to have enough K commands and whatnot to dispatch all of Emma's threats. And then we'll find out who's going to win here between England and Wisconsin, which I got to say, I'm glad to see Dom win that first game. I'm glad to see England up a point. I'm a little bit on England's team here. I got to be honest. You know, I think Wisconsin, it's the home team. They're like the favorite. You got to root for the underdog. That's what we do in America, ironically, is root for the underdog, which in this case is England. England's the underdog in America, and that's who we're rooting for. Any other thoughts on our next match before we head to a quick break?
Well, I'm just wondering in general for this cube, are there a lot of like board stalls that happen?
No, there are not.
Okay.
This cube tends to be relatively fast. There's a lot of removal, and in general, where I can as a cube designer, I always favor things that are going to remove game pieces rather than add more if I have the option. This is actually something we've had Sam on our podcast to talk about his idea of big and small games, which is just that the number of resources in play and in hand for each player dictates the viability of different cards in different scenarios strategically. And this, I aim to be a very small game environment. So basically, I have more removal than I have blockers. I'm not going to run a wall of omens. I'd much rather just run another removal spell. Because if you're going to be blanking your opponent's attacker, I'd rather it happen with fewer creatures in play. So board stalls are kind of rare. And in the last game, you know, it got the game went on a little bit long, but there wasn't ever really a true stall. There were still attacks going back and forth, you know, here and there, and that's what we tend to see. The creature lands end up mattering. You end up getting by on those small edges. But we're going to go to a quick break, but don't you go anywhere, because when we come back, we have got Emma Partlow bringing the red-white aggro heat to Sam Black's home turf against his 5-color deck. Don't miss this. Well, welcome back to CubeCon, the second annual CubeCon. We are here in the final event of the day. This is the team draft of the Bun Magic Cube. Team England versus Team Wisconsin. We just watched Dom Harvey dispatch last year's CubeCon champion Caleb Durward in 3 tight games of a sort of mid-range mirror. And now we're getting ready to buckle up for Red-White Aggro, piloted by Emma Partlow from Team England, against 5-color interactions, the name we were given from Sam Black. I think a typical Sam Black brew from Team Wisconsin. And I'll tell you what, I would not want to be sitting across the table from Sam Black under any circumstances.
He's a little intimidating, sure. I played it against him in a Grand Prix once.
How did that go?
I actually think I won. It was a team sealed event.
That's right. That's right, Jamie. We love to hear that. Excellent. Well, let's hope Emma can channel some of that energy and use her red-white aggro deck to get under the control deck of Sam Black.
It could go either way. I'm excited to see it with this one, actually.
It could. We've said it already, and I got to say it again. Sam is going to take a ton of damage from their mana base. So how is Sam going to stem the bleeding if they're taking 6, 8, 10, 12 damage a game from the mana base? Is not out of the question in this matchup. That means that the amount of damage Emma has to do with her aggro deck is dramatically reduced, which definitely changes the dynamic at play here. We do have results from the rest of round 1, and while I say we did watch Dom roll over Caleb in a great victory for the nation of England, Team Wisconsin did take the other 2 matches. So Team Wisconsin currently up 2-1. Again, the first team to 5 match wins is going to take this home. I think we're going to see a very relevant round 3 here, though. I don't think we can possibly see Wisconsin sweep this round. That would be a shocker.
It is their home turf.
It is their home turf. We are going down to the games. Now, who won the roll here is going to matter a lot. Emma really wants to be on the play, and it looks like she is. Turn 1, Figure of Destiny. A very interesting card, I think, for the aggro deck, because it gives you an option to spend your mana just on this one threat and say, you know what, you got to answer this one thing. It's great if you're trying to play around, for example, a board wipe, and you're like, I don't want to spend my mana on other creatures. I'm instead just going to make this one thing big enough to threaten my opponents. Based on the 5-color nature of Sam's deck, I suspect there's a lot of single target removal in there, in which case Emma might be better off actually just deploying more threats rather than trying to dump some mana into Figure of Destiny just to get it removed by a cheap removal spell.
Right. But it's nice to have around as a mana sink if she has nothing else to do. So
Absolutely.
That's a great card.
Perhaps Sam already feeling the pain of the mana base after thinking quite a while on his land drop and then eventually going Scalding Tarn and passing the turn. Maybe Sam just now saying, oh, Figure of Destiny. Crap. I think my opponent is playing aggro. I need to be very, very intentional about how I sequence my land drops and my spells here to balance how much damage I'm taking off my mana base with what I'm taking from my opponent. This is something I've talked to players about before, because a lot of people think, okay, well, I'm playing against aggro. I just won't shock in any of my lands. But then you threaten to take 3 more damage off that attacker if you can't move it this turn. So it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll take 2 more damage to remove it this turn to save 3 damage. The math always works out that you just end up doing a ton of damage to yourself, and it was always correct at every individual decision point. And that's just the pressure you're under from a good aggro deck in this cube. We hear that Emma's mana base is impeccable. Here, Arid Mesa has fetched up one of the Sacred Foundries, shocked it in. I don't know how much Emma knows about Sam's deck, but I don't think she should be worried about her life total here. I think you use your life as a resource to deploy your threats as quickly and efficiently as possible. Life total, just ignore it. It's just a number, you know?
Well, and she knows what she's playing against since this is a team event, so they've already talked.
She should, yes, that's absolutely true. We see Figure of Destiny getting into the red zone, and now Dreadhorde Arcanist, one of my favorite cards, one of my pet cards in this cube. No spells in the yard right now for Emma, but of course, she could untap, Lightning Bolt your face, attack, Lightning Bolt your face again. Something like that could totally happen with Dreadhorde Arcanist here, so Sam's got to be a little bit scared. This card does tend to be best when paired with blue, and you can also flashback cantrips or something, but there is no shortage of good 1-mana red spells in this cube that Emma could double up on next turn against Sam here. So a real threat that could also be a little bit of a bluff. Maybe she doesn't have one. And maybe that becomes a lightning rod for removal, and Emma's way is cleared for her next threat. No telling, because we don't have information about what's in hand here. We just know what we see on board. End of turn, Sam went and fetched up a Stomping Ground, put it into play tapped, opting to protect the life total rather than deploy any 1-mana spell at this point of the game. And yeah, we see Sam tallying up, counting on his fingers. I really do think that Sam is already feeling the pressure of this mana base, and this is by design. I want my players to have to think about how they're using their life as a resource, and for these games to be constantly proceeding to a conclusion. A Watery Grave gets shocked in and then past the turn. So there's no bluff in this. We know that Sam's got something in his hand. I don't think you would shock in a Watery Grave if you didn't have something to spend it on, because you can't afford it. So Den of the Bugbear is the land for Emma. Unfortunately, not one of the first 2, so it will come in tapped. Now, does Emma have a 1-mana spell to double up on here? And if she does, is she willing to try and run it into open mana from Sam, or is she going to wait for a window where Sam is tapped out? Lots of decisions to make in the early turns of these games.
Yeah.
Emma already down to 3 cards in hand. And that's how aggro decks work. You're putting all your cards in play. That's the goal. Sam still got a full grip over there. No spell. We just go right to combat and swing at you for 2.
Ooh.
Not the fastest clock out of the aggro deck, but what Emma is threatening is a... Here we see, this is the... oh gosh, the name is escaping me. It's the red gatekeeper, cemetery gatekeeper, that enters the battlefield, exiles a card from a graveyard, and then when a card of that type is cast or played, its controller is going to take 2 damage. So
wow.
A Punisher card. All right, now we see a repeal on that Figure of Destiny. Emma rewarded for not sinking mana into it, because it does not feel good to sink mana into your 1-drop only to have it repealed. Field of the Dead. This is definitely going to be one of the win conditions for Sam's deck here. If Sam can just simply get enough lands in play, they will start generating a win condition without having to play any other threats. It's pretty cool when your land also is your win condition and your end game.
I love that card. It's so much fun. But I don't know if he's going to make it to that point in this game.
We didn't. I'm curious as to what we saw Gatekeeper exile. I may have missed something here. I don't think anything was exiled with the Gatekeeper. It would be doing damage on land drops if you exiled a land with it. And that was the only choice Emma had at the time, was to take a land. Maybe she opted not to. It is a May, I believe.
Oh yeah, I'm looking it up. No, it says whenever. Oh wait. Exile a card from her graveyard. Yeah.
I don't even think it's a May.
No.
So I think Emma should have been forced to exile one of those lands there, which would have then dealt Sam 2 on the play of that Field of the Dead. There's just judges watching this match. I'm sure they're on top of it. Here we see a Burst Lightning. This is the play line we were talking about. Burst Lightning, you take 2. Attack with the Dreadhorde Arcanist, you take 2 more. The heat is on. Sam is under a ton of pressure here.
Right.
Redeploy Figure of Destiny. There is just a ton of damage coming
Yeah,
their
she has
way.
a board. He has none. I mean, I don't know how he gets through this.
Yeah, all those cards in hand are not going to help you, Sam, when you have no life left.
The Fun Police. That's why it's called that.
Very interesting that Emma, if able, again, I don't have the rule text in front of me, if able actually chose not to exile something with the Gatekeeper.
What
Abrupt
happens?
Decay on the Figure of Destiny here. So I think Sam taking the gamble that Emma does not have another 1-mana burn spell in hand, because that would be almost certainly lethal at this point in combination with a Dreadhorde Arcanist, and instead opting to Abrupt Decay the Figure of Destiny. No land drop for Sam. That is rough. You don't want to be the many-colored control deck missing your 4th land drop against the aggro deck.
Right. If you stumble, you're dead. Right? I mean, that's what happens.
Yep. Emma getting in for 3, putting Sam to 4, and then deploying Elite Spellbinder, saying, hey, and that's just going to get dazed. So that's a pretty efficient way to answer that. Now Sam does have a land drop in the Watery Grave, though going to take damage from it, should they choose to play it. Plains instead. And a Lightning Helix. Now,
Oh, that helps.
that's a bit of stabilization here. We're going to gain a little life, go back to 7. Emma is on a lone Cemetery Gatekeeper and 2 unknown cards in hand. Sam does have a full grip, and we know he has a Water Grave as well up his sleeve, so can Sam possibly turn the corner here? I feel like at such a low life total, it's going to be hard. Looks like Sam is taking at least 2 here from this Gatekeeper. We are 1 mana away from seeing a Den of the Bugbear activation. I see a Chandra, Torture, Defiance, and a Mountain in Emma's hand.
Ooh.
Chandra going to be quite good here. I think Sam is likely to be out of free counter magic. We could see a Force of Will or something, but no. Chandra just resolves. Now, simply by upticking and not casting cards, Emma can deal 2 damage to Sam a turn. That Chandra demands an immediate answer, as does the Cemetery Gatekeeper. The pressure is on.
Right, and the Den of the Bugbear, right? I mean,
And Den of the Bugbear. That's exactly right. We know the last card in hand is a Mountain. Even if Sam does answer those other 2 things, you're just at Den of the Bugbear next turn. Prismatic Ending. The first thing has been answered.
step 1.
Now, this should just be game.
Right.
I don't think there's anything. We know that the Dismember is in Dom's deck. And that wouldn't even help at this point because you can't pay the life. I don't think there's anything that Sam could possibly have on 1 colorless mana that is going to save them from a Den of the Bugbear activation. Emma opting for an even safer route and just arc trail you. Let's go to game 2. The aggro deck absolutely cleaning up. We're going to analyze this match, but first, we're going to talk about one of our great sponsors here at CubeCon, and that is Card Conduit. Jamie, do you know the easiest way to sell your Magic cards?
No.
I'll give you a hint. We're doing an ad read for Card Conduit right this moment.
Yes, I actually do. You just you can put them all in a box, send them unsorted.
Unsorted.
Yeah.
You do no work. You just put all your cards in a box.
They do that
and you
for
send them
you.
out. Look, I know if you're watching this stream, this is not a mass appeal event. I know if you're watching this stream, you have a box full of cards you are not using. You absolutely have a box
Stop
sitting somewhere.
calling me out.
that box full of cards is just potential energy wasting away in your home, taking up space. Turn that into more cards for your cube. Turn that into cash. Send them to Card Conduit, and they will just take care of all it for you. They sort the cards. They find the best price from their wide selection of major retailers, and they take a small fee for doing all that work. Trust me, you don't want to do that work. Let someone else do it for you. Go to cardconduit.com to get started. All right. How's Sam going to ever win this match?
Well, he's going to be on the play.
That will help a lot.
Yeah.
And to be clear, it doesn't actually matter that Sam's on the play. It matters that Emma is not on the play.
Right.
That's what really matters. So Sam's going to get to play a tapped shock land, scot-free, not have to worry about anything, and then start answering things at a perhaps a little slower pace. The Lightning Helix seems like a key card we saw out of Sam.
Are there other lifelink cards in the cube? Or
There
life gain?
are other ways to gain life. There's very little repeatable life gain, though.
Okay.
I do like my games to end, not drag on. So if a card's going to gain life, it's almost certainly going to be one shot, or you're going to have to really jump through some hoops to gain life repeatedly. So Lightning Helix can be good. That's going to be a good stabilizing play. But we saw Lightning Helix barely stemmed the bleeding right there. It was,
Right. It just wasn't
it bought a
enough.
little bit of time, but it didn't really help all that much. We did see Prismatic Ending out of Sam. We saw Abrupt Decay. It is, in fact, a suite of cheap removal spells. We saw that game that Sam could not afford the life to cast them on curve to save themselves. All right, we got 2 keeps, 2 fresh 7s. Sam starting off on a tapped Steam Vents, breathing a sigh of relief that they are not already under pressure from this deck. They get 1 turn of reprieve. Oops, I lied. Rabbit Battery coming into play with haste. Attack you for 1.
Oops, just kidding.
Putting Sam to 19. Rabbit Battery is a card that is also a little bit unassuming, but this also just has the text, for 1 red mana, anything else you play the rest of the game could have haste.
Oh, it's great.
So this little creature get in there, do some damage. Maybe you equip it to something, reconfigure it onto something to protect you from a board wipe or something like that. And then just in the late game, it's really hard for Sam to start racing back. Let's say Sam's at a low life total and this Rabbit Battery's in play. Even if they've got blockers in play for all of Emma's current threats, they have to plan on what if there's a flyer that comes down and gets haste. What if there's a creature with trample that comes down and gets haste, or a creature with an attack trigger that comes down and gets haste? What if there's a Dreadhorde Arcanist that comes down and gets haste and gets +1 power and flashes back that burn spell? It just causes a big headache in the late game. Sam playing an untapped Overgrown Tomb, taking the damage, passing the turn, back to Emma. One of those removal spells is probably up now, but you're unlikely to spend it, I don't think, on a 1/1 Rabbit Battery at this point. I did say it's a nightmare in the late game, but we're not in the late game yet.
Right.
I think at this point, you got to use your life total as a resource. Sam agrees, takes the damage, and maybe shopping around that removal for the next thing Emma plays. Which, in Emma's case, is going to be Karizev, Skyship Raider. Ragavan at home. And we see that repeal on the Rabbit Battery. Just a little tempo here. Save a little life. And Sam did wait till after combat, took the damage first to see if there was something else. I would suspect, if I were Emma, that Sam has other answers in their hand. Because if it was just repeal, your opponent's unlikely to play another 1-drop on turn 2. They're probably going to play a 2-drop at this point, which you're not going to be able to repeal. So you probably want to save that life total and just repeal it before combat. Given that we saw it after combat, probably was choosing between a suite of possible answers and perhaps has an answer to this Karizev right now. But we're going to have to shock in a Hallowed Fountain with a Scalding Tarn to get there. We're already at 13.
Wow.
The clock is ticking. So we saw Lightning Helix last game. We saw Prismatic Ending. And right now we are seeing 4/3 mana. Teferi Time Raveler. Downtick that. Put that Karizev back in your hand. Draw a card. Even if this just dies the Rabbit Battery next turn, which seems almost guaranteed, Sam is happy to just get to the late game.
Stem the bleeding.
Just less damage, draw a card, keep my deck doing its thing, because as soon as we get to the point where these removal spells can start chewing away Emma's threats, I mean, Emma's an aggro deck. I mean, talk about playing off the top of your deck like Dom was last game. Emma's options for card selection in the late game are going to be extremely limited, likely, whereas Sam is going to have a deep reservoir to pull on. So, yeah, Sam here just playing 3 mana. I gain 3 life, and you waste 2 mana next turn, basically, is what that Teferi amounted to, and draw a card. It does a lot.
Yeah, that's enough.
Emma accidentally putting the rabbit back in the graveyard. That's okay. Teferi doesn't punch back. The bunny can just kick Teferi's butt and stick and play. Sunbaked Canyon for Emma here. That is the kind of card selection you do get as the aggro deck. You know, it gets a little late. You have too many lands. Just trade that one in. We see carries have redeployed. No surprises out of Emma this turn. Exactly what we expected, and exactly what Sam likely expected. Here we see a Miracled Terminus. Terminus, the card for turn off the top. And, you know, this is a 2-for-1. It's good, but, you know, it's not amazing. You know, we're taking care of 2 cheap threats, opting to Miracle that Terminus now, again, just to get to the late game. That was not a blowout. That was just kind of like an incremental, all right, well, I got a chance to do this for 1 mana. I might as well.
Yeah.
Misty Rainforest in play, fetching immediately. What is going to be the follow-up play for Sam here? Getting an island, one of the few basic lands in Sam's deck. Trying to get a count of the cards in Emma's hand.
I think it might be 4.
The things you do as a commentary, but the skills you try and get good at. Looks like 4 or 5?
Maybe 5.
Still plenty of gas in the tank over there. And then an Uro from Sam Black. That is one of the best cards in Sam's deck against Emma, no doubt.
Oh, yeah.
There is your repeatable life gain. And like I said, the graveyards fill up fast in this cube, and Sam, in fact, already has enough cards in the graveyard to escape Uro. And presuming that Bloodstained Mire can get green, will also have enough mana to do it next turn. And if Bloodstained Mire is essentially guaranteed to get green, because we saw the Misty Rainforest go get a basic island, which you would never do if you knew you had Uro in hand, unless your Bloodstained Mire could also get green. Mountain for Emma, taking a damage off a Sunbaked Canyon. Elite Spellbinder. Paulo Vita Domidarosa is here at CubeCon on a card.
And now we get to see.
We get a little peek here. We got Watery Grave. We got Electrolyze. We got Emma Savin's Reclamation. Savin's Reclamation, really interesting on Teferi there. Just another copy of Teferi in Sam's hand. And a Path to Exile is the last card. This is the kind of hand you want if you are Sam Black playing against the aggro opponent. You've got removal spell, and a way to buy back one of my other temporary removal spells. And oh, by the way, I can just escape Uro next turn if I want.
Right. And he's getting well set up for, like, Field of the Dead if he draws that.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, you know, a couple attacks with Uro, and the Field of the Dead is probably not even necessary. I think what this comes down to is Emma going to have an answer to Uro? Because Uro is almost certainly happening right now.
Right.
And, you
so
know,
she needs Exile.
Emma, well, Exile, I mean, she's going to essentially exactly need Exile because dealing 6 damage off of burn spells is a really high bar to clear. It's going to be hard to do that with red removal. So does Emma's white removal suite have a way to deal with Uro? We don't know. We know that the Swords to Plowshares ended up in Dom's deck. We know Prismatic Ending and Path to Exile are in Sam's deck. We know the Ounce is in Dom's deck. Unexpectedly Absent is in Dom's deck. I'm starting to get worried. There aren't that many spells left that Emma could possibly have in her deck to deal with this Uro. We got a Stomping Ground with the Bloodstained Mire. We now have green, green, blue, blue. Perhaps maybe an Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath for me? That is, in fact, what we see. We are escaping Uro. Now, I will say, it's a shame that Emma didn't have exactly Cemetery Gatekeeper right there, because that is the kind of grave hate that would stop Uro before it even happened. Yeah. Now it's happened. Now there's a different kind of answer we need, which is
too late, right?
It's too late for the grave hate unless you can get it back in the graveyard somehow,
right.
Which Emma is likely, based off of what we know about the other pools around Emma, she could have a March of Otherworldly Light. She could have a Soul Partition. She could... I'm really digging here for potential answers Emma might have. Otherwise, Emma's going to be on, let me get enough creatures in play to trade with Uro in combat and then exile from your graveyard, if and only if I do, in fact, have a Cemetery Gatekeeper I have access to. Instead, it's just a Hopeful Initiate. So a pretty underwhelming turn. We're going to get in for 3 because we don't plan to chump block with our Elite Spellbinder. We're going to play our 1-mana 1/2. Not great in the face of an Uro. Sam Black immediately gets into the red zone, draws a card, gets a free land drop. The Electrolyze, for those who don't know at home, that is revealed and turned sideways just to indicate that it is taxed by that Elite Spellbinder. So That card is in exile, and Sam is allowed to cast it, but has to pay 2 more to do so. So that's a 5-mana Electrolyze right now, not a 3-mana Electrolyze.
That makes a big difference.
It certainly does. Yeah, 2 mana is a big tax when the margins are as tight as this. Now, the one thing that makes me think that Emma might have something up her sleeve is that we did not see her cycle through that Sunbaked Canyon last turn. If I'm the aggro deck and I have nothing to do with 4 mana, I'm for sure getting rid of my Sunbaked Canyon to see if I draw something.
Yeah.
This might indicate that Emma does, in fact, have instant speed interaction. Leovold, Emissary of Trest, coming down from Sam Black. Not the matchup where it's going to be the most broken because Emma likely doesn't have that much more card draw. Emma will now cycle through that Sunbaked Canyon before Leovold's punishing effect comes into play. Though now, if Emma does have any removal for Uro, it's going to draw Sam yet even more cards. We see Sam's plan. It is laid bare for us on this table. I have caught a peek of an Embercleave in Emma's hand.
Oh.
And I also see a Tarfire and a Burst Lightning. So with every turn that goes by, this gets less and less possible. But I think Emma's out at this point is to steal this game from Sam with a couple of well-placed burn spells and an unexpected Embercleave. But she'll need to get a couple more creatures in play to make that affordable. And I'm not sure how likely it's going to be to stick creatures. Here we see a Luminarch Aspirant. 1+1/+1 counter at the beginning of each combat step.
Oh, yeah.
This will get out of hand. Well, not out of hand. This will start to build up a potential board that could threaten a cheesy win with a Embercleave.
Yeah.
We already see a 4-powered Elite Spellbinder. And now we don't anymore because it got hit by Kolgahan's command.
That was like the hope.
Yep. And Sam even made Emma discard a card with the other mode of K command, and we just see the Embercleave hitting the bin because even Emma knows that's going to be too hard to make happen in the face of all this removal. Even though it seems like one of her narrow outs, she's off it. Too hard to make happen.
I mean,
Sam,
he would have to
once
completely
again,
whiff, right?
bashing into the... I don't see a lot of ways. I think Dom would have scooped by now. We saw how fast Dom scooped in the last couple of matches. I think Dom might have scooped at this point.
Well, it's more info, though.
It's true. Emma is learning more about Sam's deck. That is absolutely a valuable resource, especially depending on what her sideboard looks like. We don't know what Emma's sideboard looks like, and she might be deciding on what she's going to bring in. And if she can drag this out a little bit just to see more of Sam's cards, that's not a insignificant thing. Sam playing a Tarmogoyf. It's big. I'm not sure how big, but it's big. And Emma's saying, all right, I've had enough now that you've brought back your Teferi and upticked it. This is over. Once again, a very different game than we saw in Game 1. Sam, with that additional time, able to play those lands tapped, save a little bit of life, and then had the right sequence of removal spells at the right time. Just bought time with Repeal, bought time with Teferi Time Raveler, and then eventually Uro happened. And that's what Uro does, kids. Don't let your friends Uro, because that's what happens.
Is Uro 2 mana?
Uro is 3 mana to cast
3 mana.
and 4 mana to escape. So, you know, I think when this card is a perfect example of a card that at least the Cube community really misevaluated when it first came out, because everyone read it and was like, 3 mana for an Explorer. Why am I paying 3 mana for an Explorer plus a few life? That's nothing. And then you got to exile 5 cards and play green, green, blue, blue, and it seems like it's going to happen so much further away in the game that a lot of people did not see the power of this card when it was first spoiled. It made a lot of waves in Constructed, and now we have seen it, what it can do even in a singleton cube in this last match. Uro really carrying that whole game on its back right there. Emma, I imagine right now, feverishly paging through her sideboard saying, what can I do about an Uro? We saw the one answer in the deck already. That's Cemetery Gatekeeper. There could be more answers in Emma's sideboard. We're not sure. We'll see after we go to Game 3. We did just get news that Dom Harvey has won his round 2 match. Dom putting up some numbers for Team England. We know is it at least now 2-2, and the third round is going to matter. This will not be decided in round 2 tonight, so stay tuned, folks. Going to Mulligans. Emma on the play. She's got a big smile on her face. I'm not sure if it's because of her hand or it's because of some pleasant conversation she's making, but I know what Sam hopes it is. Sam hopes it's the pleasant conversation. That was obvious. I probably didn't have to say it, Jamie.
So she mulliganed or no?
Looks like a full 7 from both.
Oh, okay.
Unless I'm miscounting, which, you know, it's not beyond me. Once again, the rabbit getting in, but importantly, the rabbit getting in a whole half turn earlier than it was before.
Right.
Lightning Helix in Sam's hand, Daze in Sam's hand, Electrolyze in Sam's hand. Sam has the answers. The question is, will Sam be able to deploy these without losing too much life along the way? The Bloodstained Mire sits uncracked on Sam's side of the battlefield. Sam could, if they have the right dual lands, go and get a tapped island and even daze Emma's turn 2 play if they wanted to. I'm not sure that would be the plan. I don't want to be on 0 lands against the aggro deck going into my turn 2, but it's an option that might be available to Sam based on what this Bloodstained Mire could possibly fetch. The bunny gets in and does the bunny thing. Emma, Soulscar Mage, go. No second land drop from Emma Partlow.
Oh, brutal.
Showing a bit of a sign of weakness. Though, the Soulscar Mage, it's really nice at this point that Mage is a 1-2 because it means that Electrolyze is not just going to be a clean 3-for-1, at least on this board. But, needless to say, Emma does not want to be missing her second land drop. Now, if you're going to miss your second land drop, you want to do it in an aggro deck. So it's just not, not all hope lost, but definitely a concerning second turn here for Emma, especially given what we know is in Sam's hand, which is just chock full of great removal.
Oof. At least she was able to play something.
That is true, and I suspect there's a couple more 1-drops in Emma's hand. I don't think you keep a 1-land hand in this cube with a deck like that without a lot of things to do with it, but those 1-mana spells are only going to go so far. And you know what looks a lot more appealing now, too, is that Daze. You are no longer going to be down lands. You're just going to be at land parity if you get to Daze something. And when your opponent's stuck on lands, your Daze is going to get to hit. All right.
Uh-oh.
Sam, Plains Pass. Presenting 2 mana. We know Lightning Helix is held up. We know Daze is held up. We could very easily see Lightning Helix your threat, Daze your next play. Then what do you do if you're Emma Partlow?
Cry.
I think I would do the same. I'm not above a little crying. I'm not above a few tears shed on some mana screw. But wait, is that a land? Huh, maybe? She's holding it like a land. Ooh. It's a Plains. All right.
It's a game.
Magic is back on the menu, folks.
Yep.
So Emma, we're not sure what is in Emma's hand, but we know just from what's in play, we have the option of reconfiguring the Rabbit Battery, which is insulating her from any counter magic. Obviously removal would allow Sam to undo that, but not in any sort of real blowout way, right? If Sam removes the Soulscar Mage in response to reconfigure, Emma just gets to keep the Rabbit Battery. It's not, a huge blowout the same way an Aura might be. But instead, I think we see Emma going to combat first, indicating no non-creature spells she's interested in casting because she would love to get that prowess trigger on the Soulscar Mage if she were able. So we can expect the follow-up here to be a creature, and Sam is probably also thinking the same thing. Sam knows I've got a Lightning Helix for that creature if I want, or I can even Lightning Helix this creature and Daze that next creature if it's a 2-drop. Sam, a lot of options available to them. And thinking about what they're going to do on this attack.
Well, yeah, do you take the damage, or do you wait for the next creature?
Oh, boy. If it's me, I'm still using my life total as a resource at this point, but I also don't know the whole contents of Sam's hand. Cemetery Gatekeeper coming down. Emma trying to come down. I think we're going to see this Daze, and we are. Just a hard cast Daze. Sam in no rush to use their answers. They know that their life total is under pressure, but they also know that it's a resource available to them. They want to force Emma to reveal their strategy, reveal their cards, so that they can shop around that Lightning Helix wherever they want to use it, and hopefully get max value out of that Electrolyze. Though we see a Temple Garden tapped here out of Sam, indicating they might not have the additional blue or red in combination with that Steam Vents to actually cast that Electrolyze. Gatekeeper would have been big. If that Gatekeeper sticks around, 2 damage off every land drop, in addition to the damage from fetching, in addition to the damage from shocking, very, very quickly turns. Now, Emma's going to need 2 targets for this Arc Trail, so she's going to have to point 1 at either herself or the Soulscar Mage to cast it to get the 2 pointed at Sam. Pretty safe to point the 1 damage at the Soulscar Mage. It's got a prowess trigger anyway, so it's going to have the same effective toughness at the end of all of this, but still not ideal. You don't ever really want to be arc trailing your own creature just to get it out of your hand.
Right.
Sam now has a choice to just take the damage, let things proceed. Lightning Helix, the Soulscar Mage, that's what we see. Sam gaining a little life to stem some of that damage from the mana base. Rabbit Battery getting in for 1 more. Sam has answers this game. The threats from Emma have not been as imposing as they have been in past games. We've seen a couple things answered, but they were deployed a little slow. We missed our land drop on turn 2. That little stumble could really matter in a matchup like this.
Definitely.
And here is our next blue source, thus turning on the Electrolyze we in the booth know about, which is going to be real good against any other 1 toughness threat that Emma decides to play alongside the Rabbit Battery, or we're just going to do it right now. You know what? Don't even bother playing another threat. I'll 1 to you, 1 to your bunny, and I will draw a card. Now, this game is getting away from Emma, but it is far from lost. There are lots and lots of ways this game can still turn around, and Emma's got a full grip still to play with, so this might go down to the wire. Karizev, Skyship Raider, into a mostly tapped out Sam Black. That spell is going to resolve. Karizev attacks for quite a lot. Attacking for 3 across 2 bodies on your 2-drop is hard to deal with. Sam just going to be wanting to answer that creature cleanly, if they can. Another fetch land from Sam, going down to 10, even with the 3 life gained off of the Lightning Helix this game. So, effectively has been as low as 7 so far. We see a Consider from Sam, saying, I get to choose which cards I draw. Unlike you, you're stuck drawing whatever you draw. I get the power of choice here. We see a Stomping Ground, Surveil to the yard, Consider goes to the bin. We see Opt on the top now, too. All these cheap cantrips are going to effectively dig Sam to the cards he wants, and then once they get them, it's going to be fuel for the Uro Escape Fire. Bottoming the card off Opt, so getting full value off of both of these 1-mana cantrips. Didn't see the card drawn there. Getting little tiny peeks here and there. Not sure what it was, though. We're going to have to find out along with Emma. Getting done tap with this Karizev, that's got to feel good if you're Emma. The question is,
Right. Does he have an answer?
Is there instant speed removal in Sam's hand? And I think it's pretty likely, especially after resolving 2 separate cantrips with selection. Looks like our player's having a good time, and you know what? That's all that really matters at the end of the day. We can talk all we want about the grudge match, about the fierce, bitter rivalry between Wisconsin and England that we know goes back thousands of years. But ultimately, all that really matters is that we have fun playing some Magic with our friends, and oops, my carries have got eliminated. Elite Spellbinder. This is definitely one of the bigger thorns in Sam's side. Spellbinder. All right, we get to see some cards here. We got Fractured Identity. We've got Repeal. We've got Savin's Reclamation, and the last card is something. Emma saying, you know what? Let's make this Fractured Identity cost infinity. By infinity, I mean 7. But that's a lot more. We didn't see that last card in Sam's hand. I actually think it might have been... We'll repeal that Elite Spellbinder. The tax on Elite Spellbinder does outlive... It was a Thoughtseize. I was going to speculate it was a Thoughtseize. I was worried to say it because I wonder if you can keep your Thoughtseize in against the aggro player, but Sam has opted to do so, taking damage off the Thoughtseize to take that Elite Spellbinder out of Emma's hand, not taxing another one of their spells. The tax on Elite Spellbinder outlives the card, so that Fractured Identity still costs 7 and is still in exile, even though the Elite Spellbinder has been answered.
There's the Field of the Dead.
And Field of the Dead. Good catch, Jamie. So, Sam, 1 land drop away from getting zombies every single turn, as long as they can keep hitting their land drops, which is a pretty terrifying prospect if you're Emma.
Yeah.
Most of your creatures are on the ground. 2/2 blockers every turn is really tough.
Right. It's like all his draws are great.
Yes. Yeah, there's no bad draws left in Sam Black's deck at this point, pretty much. You got lands, great. They're also 2/2s. You got spells, great. We'll cast them and do stuff. And Emma just passing the turn. That's a tough spot to be. Even if you have instant speed spells, I think you're likely going to main phase them there against a mostly tapped out control opponent. So I don't think Emma is presenting any instant speed stuff here. I think she's likely stuck with some cards that don't do a whole lot. Either lands, burn spells that there are no targets for and are not yet lethal. We could see Emma saving up for a kicked Burst Lightning. That could be something that could have a big impact on this game potentially with Sam already at 8 life. No immediate land drop out of Sam, so the question is maybe you don't have another land in your hand. Let's see. I'm guessing there are probably no 2 lands in Sam's deck that share a name, so any land drop is... we do see a Scalding Tarn and an Overgrown Tomb. Scalding Tarn especially, that's going to be 2 zombies worth of creatures.
Yeah, that's brutal.
So how do you beat an active Field of the Dead as the red-white aggro player? I think the answer is you've done your work.
Yeah.
You've gotten Sam to 8. You need to top deck some burn. You got to top deck some flyers. You got to top deck some haste. Maybe you figure out some way to make some sort of miracle happen with Embercleave. You're going to have to get a little cheesy here, I think, to pull this game out because you're not winning it through honest means, through a army of undead zombies. Sam really in the tank, though, here. Not immediately playing a land, not immediately playing a spell. All right, Savin's Reclamation. This is something you can do with this card, getting back just a land, because you know what? That land is also, right now, a zombie. So Savin's Reclamation there, just a 3-mana stomping ground, but that also represents a zombie with Field of the Dead in play. And all of a sudden, Sam's got a very imposing board. All right, Lava Dart your face. Emma playing to her outs. Kicked Burst Lightning. And Emma takes it.
Wow.
Emma steals it. Lava Dart, flashback Lava Dart, kicked Burst Lightning to steal it from Sam Black. Sam went too low. Sam took too much damage there in the face of potential burn, and even though they had effectively turned the corner with Field of the Dead, that's how you do it. That's how you beat Field of the Dead. You burn your opponent's face, and you wrap it up. That's another win. I'm going to add it here to the big board for England. At least 3 wins for England, and so far as we know, just 2 wins for Team Wisconsin. We're still waiting on the outcome of the last match from round 2, and then round 3 here, it's going to be Vince, a.k.a. Pleasant Kenobi, versus J-Bro. Vince playing green-black mid-range, and J-Bro playing white-black aggro, just like we speculated, Jamie. Just like we speculated. J-Bro got past that Luris, and then J-Bro got fed on that last pick, Thraben Inspector. Perhaps Dom should have even just hate drafted at that point. Even if you're not going to play the Thalia. Maybe just don't make your teammates play against it, right? I mean, come on. Do something. All right. We're going to take a quick break here, but we'll be back very soon with round 3. It's a team draft. Things go quickly, so don't change that dial. Is that the saying? Don't touch the dial. Don't you touch that dial. We'll be back here in Madison, Wisconsin with round 3, the team draft of the Bun Magic Cube. We'll see you soon. Did you touch that dial? Because I told you not to. I told you to be quick. We are back for round 3 of the England versus Wisconsin grudge match. Vince, a.k.a. Pleasant Kenobi, versus J-Bro. Jimmy, all I care about, who are you rooting for? Who do you want to see win? I don't need any speculation about who's going to win the green-black mid-range versus the white-black aggro matchup, but who do you want? Who does your heart want?
Okay, so this is really hard because I like both of them so much. They're both amazing, and they're both...
The classic two kind problem. Too kind. Gotta pick.
I don't know.
Well, time's up. We're going to the game. We're going to find out who's going to win here. Now, we have a piece of information here that you might not see on the camera, which is that J-Bro, I believe, is companioning Luris. So turn 0 going to reveal Luris from the sideboard. Luris, by my estimation, the single best card in this cube. The curve is low enough that you can always companion it. Having access to that 8th card really matters. You get to play a bunch of cheap removal, a bunch of cheap 1-for-1s, and know that you have that late game card advantage engine. Turn 1 Duress from Vince here, revealing Dark Confidant, Iganjo Seed of the Empire, Heartless Act, Fairy Guide Mother, Prismatic Vista, and Mishra's Factory. Duress can only take Heartless Act. The judges will shortly tell him that Fairy Guide Mother is actually just a creature card in hand. It says non-creature card, unfortunately, so we're just going to get that Heartless Act out of the way. Now, as the green-black mid-range deck, I think you're very happy with this trade. I think there's a lot of decks that wouldn't want to duress a removal spell here if you're more of a controlling deck, but Vince is going to have creatures. Vince is going to be playing this game by putting blockers in front of J-Bro's creatures, hoping to have bigger ones, and duressing that removal spell seems fine. Though Vince really seems convinced he should be able to duress that Fairy Guide Mother. He's like, come on, let me take this. Why can't I take this card? J-Bro mercifully playing face up. Now, this is somebody we love to have on coverage. Thank you for leaving those cards face up for us, J-Bro. Iganjo Seed of the Empire coming into play. That's the channel land from Neon Dynasty. Just going to use it as a plains here. Pretty cool to have a plains that's strict upside. And Fairy Guide Mother. I get a lot of flack, Jamie, for the inclusion of Fairy Guide Mother in my cube. People think it's not good enough. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Because the thing is, you know, the 1/1 flyer for 1 gets a lot of flack, but here where it's really bad is in the late game. On turn 1, okay, well now, okay, hold on, timeout, I'm wrong. The 1/1 flyer for 1 looking really bad right now in the face of a 1/2 flyer Kitesail Freebooter out of Vince. Though Vince also may be realizing, I'm not going to get anything from your hand because I just saw it with duress. Yeah, Vince, little punt here.
Is it, though? I mean, now he has a flyer.
You do have a blocker. That's true. But I think you would likely have wanted to do anything else with your mana at that point rather than just play a 1/2 flyer for 2.
Maybe he didn't have anything else.
It's true. I think I detected a little bit of frustration on his face, a little bit of like, I wish I hadn't done that. But maybe not. Who knows? We'll see. Nurturing Peatland coming down for Vince. Dark Confidant deployed last turn by J-Bro. Bob Maher is literally in the building.
Yeah.
I made the joke about Paula Bridger Rosa in the last match. But Bob Maher is actually here. Oh, boy. Liliana is going to be a huge breaker in this matchup. This is Liliana. Oh my gosh, it's so late. It's not Liliana of the Veil. I'm going to scroll down here real quick just to remind myself of what my own cards in my own cube are.
You don't know every single card name?
I mean, I do when I'm well rested, Jamie, but it's not always well rested. That is, of course, Liliana the Last Hope. And that is going to uptick to kill X1 creatures. Anything with 1 toughness, Liliana is going to uptick to kill. J-Bro opting to deploy a Engineered Explosives on 3 here out of what we believe to be just an aggro deck. And on turn 3, you've got 3 different colors of mana to put Engineered Explosives on 3. That's your answer to Liliana, Last Hope. Now, Vince, if I were Vince here, oh my goodness gracious. Witherbloom Command on the Engineered Explosives before J-Bro can untap with the mana to activate. Witherbloom Command really putting in work here to getting rid of that answer, and I think going to potentially allow Liliana to run away with this game. The 1 toughness creatures in the face of a Planeswalker that upticks to kill them, and also threatens to ultimate relatively quickly into an emblem that there is simply no way that J-Bro can beat unless Vince is already at single-digit life total by the time that emblem comes down. So Liliana, the name of the game right now. Vince did miss his 4th land drop, so potentially light at the end of the tunnel. Stoneforge Mystic for J-Bro here. Immediately tapping other mana too. I guess just indicating I'm going to get this thing, I'm going to play it immediately. Is it going to be a Lion Sash? Oh, it's going to be an Umezawa's Jite for J-Bro. Now, the 2 toughness. Oh, never mind. Spoke too soon. The Stoneforge Mystic just got cast down. I was about to say it's actually going to not die to the uptick from Liliana, the Last Hope, which is a nice bonus, but actually, in fact, it's just going to die to this removal spell, and we're going to get in for 1. You know what, Jamie, you're right. Whether intentional or not, that playing of the Kaizo Freebooter on turn 2 actually working out in Vince's favor right now, as these 3-drop Planeswalkers threaten to just run J-Bro over. He's sweating over there.
Yeah.
Everyone's favorite local politician is sweating under the lights here at CubeCon in Madison, under the pressure of this green-black mid-range deck.
I mean, 2 Planeswalkers.
2 Planeswalkers. J-Bro so desperately wants a counter on his Jite that he is animating his Mishra's Factory with all of his mana, equipping the Umezawa's Jite to the factory, swinging in just to get those 2 charge counters, which on this board, you can kill the Freebooter, but that's not the best thing to do with that mana. The Freebooter is just chipping in for 1. I mean, it's doing something, but it's not doing a whole lot. And also, here's the other thing. You kill that Freebooter, then Liliana can actually downtick getting the Freebooter back if Vince chooses to. And while that might not seem like the best choice when you can just keep upticking Liliana and threaten to ultimate, you don't want to give your opponents choices, even if they seem bad to you, because they have more information than you do.
This is looking pretty rough for J-Bro.
I think J-Bro is really up against the ropes here, and we might get to witness a sweep, at least of the streamed games for Team England here, which is stark contrast to last year, where Team Wisconsin actually 9-0'd the team draft against Wizards of the Coast last year. Did not drop a single game in all 3 rounds. I'm sorry. Yeah, they didn't drop a single match. They might have dropped games. I don't remember the details of the game count, but did not drop a match in all 3 rounds against the Team Watsy last year. But this year, Team Wisconsin has its hands full. I think there's a rules clarification that's happening right now. That we've paused with cast down for some reason in Vince's hand. I think we upticked our grist, and then there was a question that maybe a judge is clarifying right now. The cast down definitely could legally target a Stoneforge Mystic. That wasn't a problem. I don't know. And then we got uptick, mill, make our insect. Seeing Vince's deck list disfigure, cast down, Liliana the Last Hope, Witherbloom Command. These are a laundry list of the cards that are going to run over a creature-based aggro deck.
Yeah. This is looking rough for J-Bro.
Now, it is a really slow clock, I will say. So Vince solidly in the driver's seat here, but not presenting a fast clock. Going to give J-Bro plenty of time to draw a potential out. Not sure what that could be, because at this point, now, I will say this. If the Engineered Explosives hadn't gone away, think of how good that would have been against Grist, against Liliana, the Last Hope. This could have been 2 Planeswalkers for 1 Engineered Explosives. But instead, Liliana's at 7. The emblem comes down at 7. Next turn, Vince could, if he choose, cash in that Liliana for an emblem, which I got to imagine is just GG from J-Bro. Or he could get greedy and aim to uptick once more. And, here we go. This is great. So look, J-Bro equipping the Jite, clearing the blocker, getting in for some damage on Liliana. Even has the option now to pump if he wants to deal more damage, choosing not to. Should be 3 counters on the GT if I'm not mistaken. 1 to kill the insect. Then you got 2 more when you hit Liliana. Unless I'm missing something. Which, again, not out of the question, because I'm here in the booth, not down there on the table, because I am a mediocre player. Vince only got 1 card in hand, so Vince's strategy is on the table for us here. Just these Planeswalkers. I'm going to uptick. I'm going to get some value. Milling over Infernal Grasp to get another removal spell for J-Bro's threats. J-Bro's got to be demoralized just by the cards milled by Vince in this game. Forget everything else. Just the card that Vince has milled has got to make J-Bro be shaking in his boots.
Right. For game 2, he's probably like, oh no, what am I going to do here?
Maybe J-Bro opted to give the insect -2/-2 for no reason. I don't know. I'm not sure why there's only 2 counters on that GT, but maybe we'll get some clarification. Otherwise, the judges are watching the match. I'm sure they're on top of it. Here we see a down tick from Liliana. Vince says, okay, fine. You're not going to let me ultimate? That's fine. I'm just going to down tick and go get my Misery's Shadow. This is a great creature in a board stall, great mana sink. The threat of activation on this makes it very difficult to attack and very difficult to block.
It's a great 2-drop.
It really is. It's a little unsuspecting, I think. You know, it's not super flashy, but just raw stats and the ability to pump is really scary in the right board state. Now, a much faster clock from Vince with the addition of this Misery Shadow. All right, what's J-Bro got up his sleeve here? It looks like a Chromatic Sphere. That's not good. I mean, it's in J-Bro's deck because he's got Luris in the sideboard. It's a good card in his deck. I mean, it's not good right now to be spending mana on Chromatic Sphere, and yet that is what we're forced to do. Well, 2 mana redraw, maybe fix some mana. We'll see. There is a little bit of a game of chicken that's being played here. J-Bro does have the option to hit instant speed, give the Misery Shadow -2/-2, but Vince, of course, also has the mana to pump at instant speed. So they're both at an impasse right now, and neither of them can blink first, right? Like, J-Bro can't afford to point those -1 counters at the Misery Shadow until Vince is tapped out. Oh, my... I thought he was playing aggro! What is going on? Damnation? I mean, it's not a blowout. It's not a blowout because Vince still has these 2 Planeswalkers, but what the heck is Damnation doing in this deck? J-Bro is actually really playing more like white-black mid-range or even potentially a like tempo control deck with that Luris if you're main decking Damnation and main decking Engineered Explosives. So really interesting card out of J-Bro there. Not what I expected at all. Honestly, the cards we're seeing out of J-Bro makes me wonder if he's even playing the Thalia because we've seen a lot of non-creatures. We've seen Chromatic Sphere. We've seen Damnation. We've seen Umezawa's Jite. These things are not necessarily going to work directly alongside a Thalia, so maybe it's in the deck, maybe not. Back to Vince. I do see a Mosswood Dread Knight in Vince's hand, which is a fantastic card for this deck, and I think is about to do some work right after we unearth our Misery Shadow. Oh, you got rid of that potentially huge threat? Let's just bring it right back. For 1 mana, that's fine. We see a great interaction here in Vince's deck that is not going to show off this game, but Grist is a creature in the graveyard, so you can unearth Grist to get Grist back into play for 1 mana, which is not really what Unearth was designed to do. Let's just put it that way. It's a pretty powerful interaction that we may see Vince get to show off in a later game. J-Bro still really up against the wall here. Has been pulling out some tricks, has had tricks up his sleeve in the form of that Damnation, in the form of that Engineered Explosives, but they're not turning the corner. They're just delaying the inevitable so far.
Right.
I like that we've seen the downticks on Liliana the Last Hope out of Vince here. I think a lot of players are reticent to downtick that Planeswalker because the ultimate feels so close. Feels just out of reach at all times. But here it's just card advantage. You just draw a creature every turn, in addition to the card you're drawing for turn with Liliana, as long as you can be downticking. I still don't understand why J-Bro is a forest in his deck. J-Bro is playing... J-Bro is like seeing through the Matrix, Galaxy Brain, playing on some sort of next level that is beyond the comprehension of my tiny mind.
Yeah, I was not expecting this.
Oh, I'm sorry. That adventure card was not a Mosswood Dread Knight. That was a Murderous Rider that is now going to be pointed directly at that animated Mishra's Factory. This was J-Bro's whole plan, was I'm going to animate this factory and attack. Those counters are coming off pointed at what? What do those counters do? Do we gain life with those counters? Well, I'm trying my best to follow along here, folks, but I'm not doing a great job. Not sure why those counters came off of the GT. It looks like in response to the attempt to equip, we saw the Murderous Rider take out that land. Oh, here's what happened. J-Bro killed his own Mishra's Factory with the counters to counter the spell of the Murderous Rider, so that is no longer on an adventure.
Oh.
He does not want that 2-3 with lifelink coming down.
Yeah.
J-Bro said, I'm losing my land no matter what. These counters aren't doing anything in the face of your untapped mana with your Misery Shadow. I might as well keep you from getting that card. I figured it out. We got there
Smart.
eventually. Luris put into J-Bro's hand, and Luris is J-Bro's engine here. This is the only way I can really see him getting back into this game, is doing something really over the top with Luris. We have one card in Vince's hand. We don't have, well, we do have an onboard answer to Luris, which is just down-ticking with Grist. Grist is going to be able to deal with any creature that J-Bro puts into play. So he's going to get one bite of the apple with this Luris, unless he's got something else up his sleeve.
So the ult is like pretty scary at this point, or no?
I'm not actually sure how much damage the ultimate does on Grist at this point. It's not a traditional ultimate in that it doesn't end the game immediately. It's kind of like a value ultimate. It's only down tick for 5. Vince has got quite a graveyard over there. I'm not sure what all it's doing. We're seeing a lot of cards get exiled here. Is this going to be like a... We saw Dom take the Hogak, so it's not Hogak. What is up? Oh, that's a Cling to Dust.
Oh.
That Vince is casting, and then it looks like also escaping. Or maybe it was milled over with Grist and is now being escaped, or milled over with Liliana is now being escaped. That's a great repeatable source of card advantage in a match where you're not under any pressure, which Vince is not right now. Keep hitting those land drops, keep ticking these Planeswalkers up, and make J-Bro do something about it. And here comes the Misery Shadow, pumping once, twice, keeping 1 mana up just in case something weird happens. Send the Insect as well. So that should be a total of 5 damage, putting J-Bro down to 11. J-Bro not liking these draws, I don't think, or maybe really liking them. It's hard to read his body language, which is always over the top and really intense. I get a lot of people asking me if Umezawa's Jite is too good in this cube because of all the creatures, and this sort of board state happens way more than people that have not played this cube expect. There's a lot of removal running around. Sometimes you just got your card sitting in play. This is your big bomb you spent a high pick on, and it just does nothing. You can't even get a creature to hold it for long enough to have it impact the game. I mean, just the onboard removal that Vince has. You play any X1, it dies on Liliana's uptick. You play anything else, it dies on Grist's downtick. You don't do anything, I'll just keep making insects and attack you with Misery Shadow. Pretty much no matter what you do, Vince is pretty happy at this point.
Right, he could just kind of sit back.
We see a mutagenic growth in J-Bro's hand. That does nothing right now. We do have enough mana to activate Cave with the Frost Dragon, but I'm not sure how that's going to do anything. Vince is still at 18. We're not going to be cheesing this game out with a few chips in with a flyer. It is of note that the creature lands are going to dodge that sorcery speed removal from both Planeswalkers. J-Bro really thinking about his options here. He's got a Luris. He's got something he can play out of the graveyard. Quite a few options to play out of the graveyard. Looks like maybe a Dark Confidant is going to be the choice. That at least means that Vince has to spend both of those onboard resources to get rid of both of the things he did with his turn, but still feels bad. He's still going to have both of his Planeswalkers left over, and J-Bro's going to be down 2 cards. He's given up. He said, I'm done with this. Let's maybe get a different draw next game. The green-black mid-range deck, J-Bro looks truly demoralized. I feel like I had a small part in the demoralization of J-Bro right now. I think that was a concessional fist bump. It's hard to tell, really. I mean, they haven't actually shuffled up yet. Was it just you did a good job fist bump, but I'm not conceding?
I mean, what is he hoping to draw here?
Can we get a ruling on that fist bump, Judge? I feel like if you fist bump me, I'm calling a judge and saying you conceded. All right. Instead, we see Luris played, Kythian Hero of Akros played, Umezawa's GTA equipped to Kythian. All right, well, time to just use my onboard Planeswalker removal and just get rid of your threats and do my thing. That's what I imagine we'll see out of Vince. Unless he do something even better, which he might have. The mutagenic growth, doing something here at least. So that is a combat trick, which you can pay Phyrexian mana for. So just 2 life to give something +2/+2. If you try and chick my Kythian, too bad. Now it's too big to die to Liliana's uptick. J-Bro doing a lot with a little here. He's really making stone soup by turning that mutagenic growth into a card that does something, at least, in this miserable board state.
So you had a plan.
Now, Vince has the choice of, do I downtick my Grist, trade an insect token for either of your creatures, almost certainly Lurrus. You don't really want to let J-Bro untap with Lurrus, because then he gets another card into the graveyard. You have the eventual answer to it, but don't let J-Bro accrue any value. I think J-Bro is also Hellbent. That mutagenic growth, I believe, was the last card in J-Bro's hand, so Vince should know very clearly that he's got this game wrapped up. But, Vince does not want to make a mistake here. If you're ahead, there's nothing more embarrassing than somehow punting away a big lead, so going to be very deliberate about his plays here. Looks like just tallying up, can I just kill you with this Misery Shadow? I definitely can if you don't block it. The Misery Shadow is a forced block, so we can just see Vince downtick here, kill either creature. The other one is forced to block Misery Shadow and just get removed, even though you managed to foil my Liliana uptick removal. Instead, we see Cling to Dust. Vince choosing, take something out of J-Bro's yard, get rid of some of those tools for Lurrus, and along the way, either draw a card or gain some life. Looks like Fairy Guide Mother hitting the exile pile. Vince is going to gain life off of that one. Or is it gain life off of lands? Check real quick here. Yeah, so it's a creature card. He gains 3 life. Yeah, so gaining life off of that, not going to get a card back for his trouble, but just taking away more resources from J-Bro. I still feel like we could have just seen a downtick Grist on Lurrus, attack with Misery Shadow, you're forced to block with Kythian, or even honestly, downtick on Kythian, because you don't want the counters on the GT, and Lurrus is forced to block anyway. Yeah, J-Bro's going to gain a little bit of life, but that was a lethal swing with the Misery Shadow and was a forced block. But Vince taking a different line here, choosing to get some value with that Cling to Dust and give himself some more options. J-Bro cheering nonetheless. J-Bro is a happy man when you're cheering under this incredible board state where you're essentially locked out. He must be cheering, I imagine, because a teammate just won a game. That's what I imagine J-Bro must be cheering for. We see the Grist downtick killing Lurrus. I would have done this the other way around personally because I don't want those 2 counters on the GT. Here, the block is still forced, but J-Bro's going to get the counters out of it, which is not ideal. Vince saying actually maybe no. I think Vince might have thought that the Kythian had 0 power, but because of the mutagenic growth on top of the 2/1 power, that Kythian does still have power in combat and is in fact going to get counters on the GT when it goes to Jesus. And I assume Vince here will be pumping sufficiently so as not to lose the Misery Shadow in the process. I tell you, our players are moving cards around between zones in ways to try and confuse us here in the booth. It's a test, but I'm not going to be confused, darn it. I saw what happened. GT's got 2 counters. Misery Shadow lives. And I believe, Vince still has enough mana to protect the Misery Shadow from potential downticks on the GT, but I do think a little bit of equity given up here on letting J-Bro. Oh, J-Bro is furious at this draw. I believe it was a land when J-Bro wanted anything but a land. And this is just game. I guess it's not game because you still can animate the Cave of the Frost Dragon and chump block the Misery Shadow yet another turn. Instead, it looks like J-Bro opting to animate Cave and just get rid of Liliana.
But now doesn't he die to Misery Shadow?
I believe so. He's got a little life gain on the GT, but I got to see how much mana. You've got some life on the GT. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lands on this. So it's a 10-10 Misery Shadow. So not actually dead on board. The life gain on those GT counters. Vince actually gave up a whole turn here by choosing the wrong creature to downtick on that Grist with. Again, unless I'm missing something. Caveat to everything I say. Maybe I'm wrong, but
so he's hanging on here.
I mean, J-Bro continues to somehow pull a little very sickly rabbit out of a hat that allows him to survive another turn under the onslaught from Vince's green-black mid-range deck here. He may be out of sickly rabbits, though, very shortly.
So he's top decking, right?
Yeah, J-Bro's been top decking for a hot second now, and somehow has still managed to make things work. Yeah, as a reminder for those at home, those counters on the GTA each represent 2 life. So J-Bro effectively at 13 right now. The Misery Shadow can attack as a 10-10 plus the 1 insect. So we could put J-Bro effectively to 2.
But if he taps out, maybe he can get removal for it.
That's true. It's actually true. You can't tap out in the face of the counters. This is the game of chicken, right? So Vince has to attack here, and if he tries to tap out to make this lethal, then J-Bro can either try and remove the shadow in response, though if Vince is smart, he'll do it one at a time. Say, activate, pass priority. Activate again, pass priority. Don't do it all at once. I think it's what he's doing. It's hard to say. We can't hear our players. Vince really does not want to mess this up. I could sympathize. Being on stream, being on coverage is very stressful. J-Bro is a seasoned pro. He knows how to play. He knows his way around these cubes, knows his way around a white aggro deck. Though, again, are we playing an aggro deck here?
No.
We had Damnation. What are we doing with Damnation in our aggro deck? There's a chance.
Well, and like, how many colors is he playing? What's that forest for?
That's a really darn good question, Jamie. What the heck is that forest for? J-Bro continues to draw lands off the top. He's still not giving up. We're still going to animate this Cave of the Frost Dragon. We're still going to equip the GTA to the cave. We're going to swing. We're going to hit Grist. We're going to get more counters on our GTA, which represents more potential life gain.
Well, but now...
I do think he's just dead on board now, though.
Yeah.
Because now he can gain potentially, if this hit happens, if Vince has no interaction, he's got 4 counters now. He can gain 8 life, go to 11, but Vince has more than 11 power in play with that mana and the Misery Shadow. So this is over now. J-Bro played his land, so this game is just wrapped up. Vince need only attack, right? Because you pump, and if he ever tries to make it smaller, then you pass priority every time. He can't afford to make it smaller. He's got to gain the life, and the life gain is not enough. Vince shopping around for that Cling to Dust still. We might see a Cling to Dust escaped 3 times in this game. Again, a testament to how fast graveyards can get filled up in this cube. Are we missing something, Jamie? Can you check my math here? Am I wrong?
Well,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 lands. So Misery Shadow threatening to be an 11/11. Plus 2 insects that are both not summoning sick. That's 15 total damage coming in. J-Bro tapped out, no cards in hand. GTA in play representing potentially 8 life gain, going up to 11. But we have 13 power.
Right. I guess you just play it out and hope he messes up.
I think J-Bro is just hoping that Vince does something incredibly stupid, like hold priority, tap all of my mana into my Misery Shadow, and then he just takes a counter off the GTA and kills it. But no, that's not what happened. We see somehow, that game should have been over, frankly, like 15 minutes ago. J-Bro managed to hang on.
Yeah, the tenacity.
That's exactly the word for it. That's a great way to put it. J-Bro had the tenacity to hold on. We saw a Damnation out of a supposed white-black aggro deck. We saw an Engineered Explosives, which is a card I'm always saying is underrated in this cube. The curve is so low here that you can oftentimes turn that Engineered Explosives into a one-sided board wipe of sorts. There we saw it being used as a sort of Swiss Army knife answer to a Planeswalker. I think you have the most important question of this match. What's that forest doing in there?
Yeah, what? I don't know.
J-Bro, what's that forest doing in there? We're going to find out. What could that forest possibly be? So, we don't have any other results yet. So, as far as we know, the score still, we know that England has at least 3 wins. So, they need 2 more, and Vince is fighting for one of them right now. We know Wisconsin has at least 2 wins, and obviously there's some other results that have come in that we don't have yet in the booth here. So, the outcome is still to be determined. I think this is a really good showcase of what a good green-black mid-range deck could look like. Have you ever heard the sort of slander that green-black gets in Cube?
No.
Some people are like, oh, all the new players that draft Cube for the first time, they just draft green creatures and black removal spells and think they're going to have a good deck, and that's never any good.
I've never heard that. Is that real?
I'm glad. You're in better social media circles than I am, because I've heard this over the years, and I think Vince is really showing off how his deck can work. And the way I really like it working is when your threats and answers are way cheaper. I don't love the green-black mid-range deck that's playing a bunch of 4 and 5 drops and a bunch of Doomblades, but hey, if you're playing a bunch of cast downs and 2 drops that can get your opponent dead, like Misery Shadow, like we saw Blood Sky Berserker in the graveyard there. It was in play for 1 turn, then something happened to it. I'm not sure what. Blood Sky Berserker, a threat that can really scale and get huge. 2 drops that can get your opponent dead and cheap removal, I think is a great recipe because you can, against an aggro deck like this or a deck with small creatures, you can remove them. And against a control deck, you got 2 drops that can kill your opponent. You can be the aggressor. We're going to go back to game 2. Vince versus J-Bro here at CUBECon in Madison, Wisconsin. Real quick, I do want to thank one more of our sponsors here at CUBECon. we have Card Castle as a sponsor for CUBECON, the exclusive sponsor, in fact, for CUBECON University, and it's the premier collection management platform. Boy, it's been a long day for Magic players and collectors. This allows you to catalog your collection, wield it at your fingertips on your smartphone. It had a completely accessible digital catalog, so you know what you got. You don't have to buy those singles anymore that you know are rotting away in some box somewhere. You can keep it all carefully categorized. It's great for things like, if you want to have special insurance for your collection too, having a collection manager like this that keeps the list is very important. Check out Card Castle, and we're going to get back to the action here. Here we see a Bitter Blossom from J-Bro. That's going to really change the texture of this game. A Kite Sail freebooter out of Vince does have a hit this time. J-Bro left with a very land-heavy hand. Plains, Swamp, and Blood Chief's Thirst had a couple removal spells. So, no matter what, that Kite Sail freebooter is going to be removed, whether you take the Fatal Push or the Blood Chief's Thirst. I think some players think that it's bad when they get to remove your Kite Sail freebooter, but the reality is you just forced J-Bro to use a removal spell, maybe where you didn't want to, and you played a 2-drop that he had to answer because it also temporarily locked down another removal spell. So I think sometimes just making your opponent remove that thing is quite good.
Right.
Bloodsky Berserker out of Vince. Is he going to pass or play a second spell? Do a second spell, Vince. You're supposed to do a second spell now. Tap that mana. Come on. No, just passing the turn. What a shame. Bloodsky Berserker's good name impugned yet again. So, every turn, J-Bro is losing a life and putting a 1/1 Flying Fairy into play.
What a deal.
It is a great deal. I think a new Magic player might be like, life loss, why would I want to do that? But you just got to do the math on the Bitter Blossom. That'll kill your opponent unanswered in 6 or 7 turns. It's well worth 7 life to kill your opponent in 6 or 7 turns. And even if you're not killing your opponent, you get chump blockers for days. Turn every attacker into 1 damage, essentially, the 1 life you paid for that fairy. It does everything.
For 2 mana.
Ooh, Liliana, a pretty darn good answer to Bitter Blossom. Liliana the Last Hope, really just snuffing out J-Bro's Last Hope, perhaps. This is a very polarizing card of these kinds of matchups. Now, that Bitter Blossom is effectively producing no fairies a turn, while that Planeswalker's upticking, and J-Bro is still losing that life. Now, is it still, even in this situation, Bitter Blossom is still pretty good, because it is essentially tying up that uptick on Liliana, which either means that J-Bro is going to start accruing fairies, because Vince has to point that uptick at another creature, or his other X1s are going to be safe as Liliana continues to be on clean up the fairies duty. So, however, the I-Turn, I missed this creature land in play for J-Bro. That's a clean answer right there to the Liliana. So, yeah, that was clean. That was great. The creature land sneaking by there. Not sure if Vince missed it as well, or just didn't see that potential answer for the Bloodsky Berserker, was counting on that being a blocker. But now we have that. That does also exile a thing from a graveyard on attack, which J-Bro is now reading. It's got Menace, so even if Bloodsky Berserker had stuck around, it wouldn't have been able to block. Solo. A dominating start from J-Bro here, using his same tenacity and inventiveness, but instead of to claw back from the brink of death for way too long, he's actually gaining a little bit of advantage here and taking the leg up.
Yeah, Bitter Blossom is just so brutal. I mean, a threat every turn.
It's one of my favorite cards to play with, and honestly against. I think it's this awesome play pattern where it's like the game is on a clock now, and you get this huge advantage, but you've also kind of signed a deal with the devil.
It's like a tension, yeah.
Dying to your own Bitter Blossom is, in my opinion, one of the noblest ways to die in a game of Magic. Right under dying to your own Dark Confidant, which J-Bro also has in his deck.
I also like milling yourself. I think that's pretty fun.
Nice. I see you're a fellow sicko. All right, 2 fairies coming in the air. Vince, no blockers in the air. Maybe a removal spell? No, we're just going to take that damage. What did J-Bro tap his mana for? I just don't know. Yep, I don't know. I'm confused. Anyway, Misery Shadow coming in. Now, these fairies are not going to raise the Misery Shadow unless they're chump blocking.
To bring Luris
in.
Luris
into his hand. Thank you. Thank you, production. That is very helpful. Luris came into J-Bro's hand from the sideboard. That is what that 3 mana is. Now, should J-Bro choose not to chump block with fairies here, this Misery Shadow is absolutely going to outrace him, but he's got that go for the throat in his hand. So, yeah, sure, dump mana into that Misery Shadow. I dare you. J-Bro with a pretty commanding lead right now. Vince down to 3 cards in hand. J-Bro's got 4. One of them's Luris. He's got a Bitter Blossom upticking. Well, not upticking. Bitter Blossom ticking away, unanswered. Vince is going to need something good. We've already seen Liliana, perhaps Vince's best card in this whole matchup, get cleanly answered. Here we're getting a Scrabbling Claws, which you got to respond to the casting of Scrabbling Claws. J-Bro does get 1 free bite at the apple there before Vince gets priority to Murderous Rider, the Swift End, rather, the Luris. That's going to cost Vince a little bit of life, though. This 2-3 lifelink could be, let's call it a thorn in J-Bro's side. I don't think it's going to turn the tide of this game single-handedly, but that life gain really reduces your turn clock on your Bitter Blossom fairies. So could be annoying for J-Bro and might demand some sort of answer.
He has like 3 cards in hand?
I think we got 3 cards in hand for Vince and 3 in hand for J-Bro because we spent the Luris last turn and then played the Scrabbling Claws. Scrabbling Claws represents effectively a card in hand. It can just be cycled for 1 mana, draw another card. We have seen Grave Hate be relevant in this matchup. We have Cling to Dust that could come in out of the graveyard. So J-Bro might want to keep that Scrabbling Claws around to target something. But no, I'm not going to wait around for a something like a Cling to Dust. I'm just going to cash this in for a card right now and keep the pressure on, which I think is the right answer. J-Bro may be even just digging for an answer to this Murderous Rider, not wanting to deal with all of this life gain, potential life gain out of Vince. I'll tell you what, no matter what, I want to see a Game 3 here. So even though I'm rooting for England in the abstract, I would like to see J-Bro take this down so that Vince can then win in a decisive Game 3. That's my wish here. There's that random forest that we still have no clue. I mean, is there a chance? I don't know how much you know about J-Bro, Jamie. I know him okay, but not super well. Is there a chance that this mad lad is playing Lethal Scheme? I love this card. This is a removal spell with both Connive, so it causes creatures to connive that tap 2 mana for it, and a Convoke. So Convoking with the Murderous Rider, threatening to put a +1/+1 counter on it right now if he discards a non-land card, which an additional point of lifelink every turn is a huge deal. That +1/+1 counter could really matter in this matchup.
Was this a commander card or something?
It was, yeah. Lethal Scheme was printed in a supplemental product, in a commander product, and really cool card, I think, for one-on-one Magic like this.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I was saying is, the question I was asking, is there a chance that J-Bro is such a mad lad as to, oh boy, I Ganjo, Seed of the Empire, we're just going to go ahead and deal 4 damage to your attacking creature. How does that feel? I bet it feels bad. He may have put that force in there just for Engineer Explosives. That's the question I've been trying to get out for the last minute and a half. I would be shocked, but it's not out of the question.
Yeah,
We've seen no green cards so far, so it would have to be... What else could he be doing it for? Because we know that Dom got so many of the green, white, gold cards that I can't imagine what other sort of cards J-Bro would be enthusiastically splashing for in a deck like this. But also, as I've previously mentioned, I have no access to the powerful brain of someone like J-Bro. He's truly on the next level. All right, you tapped out. Here comes a Grist. We're going to uptick, make our Insect, flip over a Snuff Out. Snuff Out, really happy to mill that one right now. Really awful against Bitter Blossom. Not only can not even target the fairies, but the life loss against a army of flyers is not what you want in the first place. So pretty fortuitous mill for Pleasant Kenobi there. Tapping 3 more mana, thinking about his life and choices. I think a judge is pointing out that the Murderous Rider died and in fact needs to be shuffled into your library when it dies. So that was a missed trigger from earlier. They're maybe figuring out how to resolve right now. Maybe it's a May, and he chose not to do it, and now he's delving something away. He's delving away for a Tossiger. Maybe Murderous Rider is a May, and we saw Vince keep that card in there specifically so he could delve it away. I don't think it is a May. It goes to the bottom of your library when it dies. Maybe just a missed trigger that the judging staff determined was missed and therefore should remain missed. I'm not sure. I'm definitely not a judge. Now, Tossiger, a 4/5 in this board state, that does matter.
Is that the banana guy?
That is the banana guy, yes, exactly. All right, here we see Fairy Guide Mother. Oh my gosh, Mutagenic Growth plus the Guided by the Fae adventure off Fairy Guide Mother, which J-Bro just put right in the graveyard. He's like, I'm not going to bother putting this on an adventure. I'm just going to get you dead right now by double pumping, one of my fairies swinging in. We are going to get the game 3 I have always wished for. All of these matches have gone to game 3, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Some really good magic here. So, as a reminder, for everybody that just tuned in, we are finishing up the team draft of the Bun Magic Cube here at CubeCon in Madison, Wisconsin. We've got Vince, a.k.a. Pleasant Kenobi, going up against J-Bro, the Cube father himself, in the last round here. We don't know the full results. The full results have not made their way to the booth yet. I haven't gotten word from my little gremlins, but we know there are 3 wins on the board for England, 2 wins on the board for Wisconsin. It's going to come down to the wire.
It's exciting. This is exactly what you want to see.
Now that more games have played out, have you felt your heart pull in one direction or the other? Yeah, if you felt that you really want one team to bring this home.
I don't want to choose. Do I have to choose?
You don't have to, but I'll say I want to see the hopes of all the Wisconsinites scattered on the rocks here in their home turf. You don't get to be the capital of Cube forever. These English people are going to come in here and take it from you. That's what I want to see. Vince playing green-black mid-range against J-Bro playing white-black aggro. They're going to do big sideboarding right now. Sideboard options, if you're one of these players. I got to imagine that J-Bro's got a deep sideboard if he's already got Damnation in the main deck.
Yeah.
Also, J-Bro has the option, probably accrued a couple of 3-drops in Pack 1 before he had Aluris. May choose to uncompanion Aluris if he really feels those 3-drops are really powerful in the matchup. I doubt we'll see that, and I doubt it's correct. Just keep that Aluris in the sideboard. Probably it's your 8th card. Pretty powerful. We're going to see who's going to win. We're going back to the game right now to settle this once and for all. England versus Wisconsin.
I see a Jite.
Game 3. Jite in the opening hand. Vince on the play, leading with the Swamp, and go. Windmill slamming, the K with the Frog. Oh, and we see J-Bro's favorite card, Thraben Inspector. He calls it all sorts of silly names, like Thraby, Waby, Always Be Thraben, all kinds of stuff. You got to channel your Ned Flanders to appreciate Thraben Inspector. Off a K with the Frost Dragon. I would love, just to demoralize him, for Vince to remove the Thraben Inspector. You know, you never want to put a removal spell Thraben Inspector, but just to send a message. Just to send a message to J-Bro. Point a cast down to that thing. Kill it. Instead, Vince opting for a much more strategically sound plan of playing a Bloodsky Berserker. Thraben Inspector getting in for 1. Now, hopefully Vince can grow that Bloodsky Berserker this turn. I think the ideal play pattern with Berserker is you play it on 3, where you can immediately follow it up with a 1-drop, so you essentially pass the turn with a 3-3. And then the next turn, you can fit a double spell and make a 5-5. Hopefully you see at least 2 spells out of, oh my goodness gracious. This is punishing. We
what
see
is that?
Wither Bloom command coming down here is going to remove the Jite, and it's going to also draw Vince a land. That's a very clean 2-for-1. This is another card I think is pretty underrated. Cling to Dust. Just get rid of that Jite also. I'll draw another card. That's 2 spells. Put 2 counters on my Bloodsky Berserker. Swing in for 3 with Menace. How's that Thraben Inspector looking now, J-Bro? Huh? How's it looking now? Well, I guess you send that Thraben Inspector on what I like to call the walk of shame, where you're like, well, you're not doing anything on defense, so I guess I'll let you attack, even though you're also not doing anything on offense.
So that's like J-Bro's pet card. Do you have a pet card in this cube?
If I had one pet card, I mean, there's a lot of pet cards in this cube because it's my cube, but I would have to say Dreadhorde Arcanist is probably my pet card in this cube. I will do anything to make that card good. I adore it. Abundant Harvest off the top here from Vince. He's named non-land. He's going to get a Snuff Out. Snuff out the Thraben Inspector. Do it, Vince. Snuff out the Thraben Inspector. Send a message. I just got word from my little gremlins that England has currently got 4 wins on the board. It's 5 match wins to take home the trophy, and Wisconsin currently has 3 wins on the board. The outcome of this match, should Vince win, will determine the outcome of the team draft. If Vince loses, then J-Bro's teammates have a chance to bring this home for Wisconsin. It's all on the line here. We do see 2 more spells, though. That's a 5-5 with Menace.
That got big pretty quick.
And Fatal Push.
Oh.
This is the push and pull of these powerful 2-drops. Is you can make your 2-drop into a 5-5, 7-7, but it still dies to Fatal Push because it's still a 2-drop. Vince dropping the Misery Shadow, maybe trying to bait out a removal spell even on the Bloodsky Berserker, because I think, you know, in the long game, Misery Shadow may be even better. It does have that built-in Grave Hate against Luris, which could be quite potent. I, for one, am furious that Vince has not snuffed out this Thraben Inspector. J-Bro in the tank here has answered the biggest threat from Vince, That Bloodsky Berserker, though, I don't think it can be overstated how big that Witherbloom command was. Removing a very key card from J-Bro's deck and drawing a card all for 2 mana.
Yeah.
That was a huge swing that is kind of an invisible swing, right? Like, it doesn't read on board like a huge swing, but that kind of 2-for-1 is exactly how you win a game against a deck like this. J-Bro, playing a Swamp, tapping in for a black mana. Here's a Scrabbling Clause. Going to put an end to any graveyard nonsense. Let's get rid of that Cling to Dust, perhaps, before you can escape it. No, just going to let him keep it for now. Vince clarifying that if you just tap the Scrabbling Clause, then Vince gets to choose the card that is exiled from his graveyard, not J-Bro. Or J-Bro could pay 1 and sack it to take a card of his choice and draw a card. Okay, now I genuinely think there's an argument to snuff outing the Thraben Inspector. Because it's just a chump blocker now for your Misery Shadow, which could just end this game very quickly if it goes unchecked. For all he loves Thraben Inspector, just going to throw it under the bus. For shame, J-Bro. He's got an eyebrow up that says, I might have mutagenic growth. He's gonna soul partition his own Thraben Inspector.
What is that?
This man loves Thraben Inspector. Soul partition, 2 mana. Oh, in response, we are removing it. We are removing it. Now, he did cast that into a known snuff out, right? That snuff out was face-up information. Anyway, J-Bro going for it all with that soul partition. That would have allowed him to cast his own Thraben Inspector from exile, making another treasure token. I'm sorry, another clue token, rather, which is exactly how J-Bro wants to win a game of Magic, casting multiple Thraben Inspectors. But perhaps his love for the card has blinded him into this blunder of just letting this happen to him. Activating the Scrabbling Clause here, say, get rid of whatever you want. Let's just chip away at that graveyard. Then we're going to exile the Cling to Dust. Get rid of the thing that matters. Draw a card. J-Bro needs an answer here, though. We got a Tossler that got delved in. We got a Misery Shadow. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 power in play right now for Vince. 11 effective power if you count all the mana that can be dumped into that Misery Shadow.
Oh.
Damnation! J-Bro always has it up his sleeve.
Reset.
This is madness. Absolute madness. The last time we saw a Damnation cast in this matchup, Vince had only Planeswalkers to play, basically, so it didn't matter all that much. Vince now just passing the turn. Vince has got nothing. J-Bro has maybe pulled this out of the hat. I see an Engineered Explosives in his hand, too, which, if I'm J-Bro, I'm just putting that on 3. You have no permanents except for Lurrus that cost 3 in your entire deck, by definition, and we know that Vince has multiple 3-drop Planeswalkers that are huge problems for you. I think there's an argument to just putting that. I guess maybe it doesn't have 3 colors of mana right now. We need that forest before we can do that. But that's maybe something that J-Bro could look to do in the future. Or just play Lurrus and run away with this game. If Vince is going to do nothing, then take this win when you can get it. In fact, here comes the Lurrus into the rare. Yeah, that's a really risky play by J-Bro. To play Lurrus without the mana up to immediately cast something from your graveyard with Lurrus' ability is giving up a lot of equity, which sends a message to me that J-Bro really wanted to press his advantage. I think it was kind of clear that Vince had removal spells. We saw multiple cards in his hand. He didn't play land for turn. He just passed.
Right.
That's got to be a removal spell. So
if you don't put a
I
threat
don't
on
like
board.
that. Yeah, so I don't like that play from J-Bro. I think you should have seen the removal spell coming. Here we see Kaizo Freebooter taking a removal spell from J-Bro. Evolve Sleeper. That's a reader. That's a level up creature that Vince is currently familiarizing himself with. This is going to grow and eventually represent a source of repeated card advantage if it's not removed. But there's a Snuff Out in hand that can't hit that Evolve Sleeper because Snuff Out only hits non-black creatures. So the Sleeper is safe from the Snuff Out. And we've got Engineered Explosives on 2, which threatens to answer the Kitesail Freebooter and also says don't play any more 2-drops. No more 2-drops for you. And J-Bro is opting to cash it in right away rather than kind of lock his opponent under you're banned from playing 2-drops until I decide otherwise. Pressure plate. I see a Snuff Out, and is that a Takanuma Abandoned Mire? I'm not sure what that other card in Vince's hand is. It's very dark, whatever it is. It's the art and text box. It's a very dark card. Oh, it's Toxic Deluge? I think it might be Toxic Deluge. We're seeing dueling. When both players come to the table with their black board wipes in their deck, you know one of them is probably making a deck building mistake. You don't really want to both be playing board wipes at a table like this. That is Deluge. I'm fairly confident now. We see Evolve Sleeper coming in. Now, J-Bro does not know this, but he's free to just level up this right now if he wants Vince has nothing instant speed that could deal with this. So the question is, how much mana is he willing to sink into this? He's got one unknown card. Looks like he is leveling up to the 2/2 and then also going to put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card and lose a life, which I like this play at this point. I think at this point you've got presumably nothing else amazing in your hand. That one unknown card could be good, but we don't know. I think card advantage is what you really care about here. We've seen so many sorcery speed removal spells out of Vince. You've kind of pressured the 1 minute. Yeah, that's not technically a counter. Vince is correcting this. It becomes a 2/2 invisibly. It's just a state change to the object, and then there's actually a single +1/+1 counter on it right now. Little annoying to track these level up creatures, but I do love the play patterns they have, where they give you choices for how to spend your mana.
Yeah.
There's a land out of Vince. We've got a Deluge. Are we going to see a Toxic Deluge removing a single creature? I mean, I think he has to. He's just essentially not literally dead on board, but he's really far behind. We got Mutagenic Growth. Hold on a sec. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's standing to take 7 on... No, it's not 4 black. You need 4 black to do that. I don't think we have 4 black mana on J-Bro's side. I see 3. Yeah. You're taking 6 damage on board right now if you don't cast this Deluge. And if you take that 6, Deluge is off the table as an option. Now you actually can't cast it next turn because you don't have the life to pay.
Right.
This Damnation absolutely turning the tide of this game. We talked about how important Vince's Witherbloom command was. Those 2-for-1s are how you win games like this. And you know what J-Bro says? How about a 3-for-1? Maybe I'll 3-for-1 you. Maybe that's how I'll win this game. Vince is in the tank, but I think he's priced into this. I don't think he has any other option. And because of that face-up Mutagenic Growth, he's got to pay 2 more life than he wants to. He's got to pay at least 5 life to guarantee, as far as he knows, that Evolved Sleeper actually gets killed by that Toxic Deluge. That's going to put him to 4 anyway. That's a bad spot to be. Maybe calling a judge to confirm exactly how this works. Oh, the Cave of the Frost Dragon's right there. That's a good point. We shouldn't miss our creature land. So he could pay 5 life, go to 4, take 3, guaranteed next turn from that Cave of the Frost Dragon as a baseline. That's if J-Bro has nothing better to do. The other thing is, here's the other thing. Vince could cast the Toxic Deluge, has to pay 5 life because the Mutagenic Growth is face up. J-Bro does not have to spend the Mutagenic Growth, though. Says, all right, fine, it's dead. I keep the Mutagenic Growth. Next turn, I attack you with Cave, pump it with Growth, you're dead there anyway.
The creature lands are sneaky.
Yeah. Now, Vince does have the stuff out for the Cave of the Frost Dragon, but cannot stuff out and Toxic Deluge because he doesn't have enough life to do both. Or enough mana to do both. You can only you can use the mana mode on snuff out, which I think what we're going to see here is I think Vince was really hoping that J-Bro was going to go for the lethal swing with the Cave of the Frost Dragon and the Evolved Sleeper, and then he would get to spend 4 mana on the snuff out. And that doesn't target black creatures, Vince. This is going to be a very bad day for you. Oh, dear. This is a moment of reckoning for me as a cube designer. I really actually don't like the play patterns of non-black creature removal spells, but I just love Snuff Out so much. I've allowed it in for so long. That's a pet card of mine that I actually don't like the design of it. Here's why I don't like it. Because this is a situation where the color of that creature just happens to have changed the tide of this game dramatically. Vince looks defeated. I don't feel good right now as the cube designer, I gotta say. He's unhappy. There's words being exchanged at the table. J-Bro's got a gleeful look of gloating on his face. But let's not forget, even if Vince falls right here, his team could still win. The individual outcomes do not matter. This is a team draft. Vince, you may fall, but your teammates may carry you to victory. All you need is one more win from either Emma or Dom in round 3. At 4 life, how did... Oh, it took a hit from the Evolved Sleeper. Okay, so we didn't animate the thing. We just took it from the Evolved Sleeper. We're playing Bitter Blossom, so that's going to be it. Doesn't have the life to pay into the Toxic Deluge at this point. Dead on board, unless J-Bro, I guess, is afraid of something and makes a terrible mistake. Vince opted maybe to go out on his own terms, pay 4 life into Toxic Deluge, kill myself. There you go. That's it. J-Bro brings home the win for Team Wisconsin. Some truly tenacious gameplay out of J-Bro there. I got Justin right around the corner here. Was that the deciding match? It was the deciding match. Unbelievable. These hometown heroes just can't catch an L. It's only a matter of moments for I'm sure J-Bro is going to be over here gloating, pushing his way into the booth. Our security can only do so much. I'm told by Parnell, he's screaming. J-Bro is screaming in the distance like a wild banshee. I'm told we can just cut the stream off before J-Bro gets here. Everybody, tune back in tomorrow starting 9 a.m. Central. That's right, the weird time zone. not East Coast, not West Coast, not Mountain, the even weirder time zone. 9 a.m. Central. We'll be back here from Madison, Wisconsin, broadcasting all the best that CubeCon has to offer. We got so many great cubes on offer tomorrow. Jamie, it's been a pleasure being in the booth with you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
I hope you get some good drafts in tomorrow. Any cubes you're looking forward to drafting particularly?
There's so many. I got like overwhelmed. I don't know which ones to pick actually.
Jamie won't pick a winner. She won't choose sides in this match. She won't pick which group she's going to draft, but darn, she's so nice. She's very, very nice. Thank you for being in the booth with me. Everybody, we'll see you tomorrow here at CubeCon. We're shutting off the stream before J-Bro takes over. No pirate radio here.